I'm trying to platinum and 100% as many games as I can. In my last couple of videos, I've been completing games that released last year, and there was one more game that caught my interest that I wanted to play and platinum. Hell Is Us released on September 4th last year on all major platforms and was developed by Rogue Factor. It follows a man named Remy who ventures into the war-torn country of Hadia to find his parents, only to discover that the region is infested with supernatural beings following a mysterious event named the Calamity. Now, I can't lie, I have some pretty silly reasons for platinuming this game. You might think this is weird, but when I first saw the trailer for this game last year, I got Jedi Fallen Order vibes because the main character had a glowy sword and wore a poncho.
Well, see, Anthony, Stig, you're talking about the story, gameplay, characters, but you haven't mentioned a poncho.
So that piqued my interest and I wanted to play. And then my other silly reason, well, my plan is to do the Batman Arkham series next, and because I'm doing Arkham Origins on PC, then I would only get platinums for the trilogy on PS5, which would bring me to a total of 49 platinum trophies so far. And when I say the Arkham series, that includes all games including Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and that would have been my 50th platinum. And to be honest, I don't want that legacy on my profile, so I decided that I wanted Arkham Knight to be my 50th platinum. I mean, the platinum is quite literally called I Am the Batman.
Absolute cinema.
So I knew I needed one more platinum in between so this would happen. And so, Hell Is Us was the game. There are 41 trophies to collect for the platinum, with the guide giving the game a 3 out of 10 difficulty and takes between 25 to 50 hours depending on whether you follow a guide or try to figure things out for yourself. I kind of did the latter as I followed a missables guide because I did not want to play a second playthrough if I didn't have to. Thankfully, once the story is over, you are able to return to the world and clean up everything else that isn't missable, so I was going to try and figure stuff out for myself and complete things as the story went on, whilst getting the missables, of course, and then during the cleanup, I would use a guide to get the rest of the collectibles that I missed. So, with that game plan, I was ready to begin Hell Is Us and figure out what it was all about. Just quickly, if you enjoy this video, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button if you want to see more of my content in the future. I would love to start pushing for 100k subs this year and get that silver play button. I appreciate everyone who takes the time to subscribe, and so without further ado, let's get into the platinum journey. Of course, with any single player game, we first had to begin by starting a new game. And this is where I had the choice of difficulty. Now, the last game I did, Ghost of Yotei, I played that on the hardest difficulty. But this time around, I thought I would take things a little bit easier as I kind of just wanted to speedrun through this game. And thankfully, there were no trophies related to difficulty, so I decided to just play it on the normal difficulty, aka balanced. Once we've chosen that, we then get a sneak peek at what this game is really about. There is no map, no markers indicating where people or things are, where to go next, or who to talk to. So essentially, you need to pay attention to the game's environment to understand what to do next. Which, I can't lie, is a really cool game concept, especially with games nowadays having markers for everything. But at the same time, I was also kind of worried because as a trophy hunter, having no map to keep track of collectibles and where they are was a very scary thought. But I was open to this new experience and excited to try it out. And so of course, following that, the game opens with the intro cinematic, setting up the story. Here we are introduced to our main character, Remy Latam, who is currently being held by a mysterious organization and interrogated by this ugly looking dude. Like, how does one actually gain that big of a chin? And his skin is literally grey, which for some reason is never actually explained. Also, I forgot to mention, our main character has like the worst haircut of all time. Like, what is that? Anyway, enough of that. We find out that Remy is being pumped full of truth serum, so he will tell the truth to his interrogator, who is questioning him on why he went back into the country of Hadia. And he hints at something that Remy has done that has caused this organization harm. Of course, we will find out what this is as the game goes on, but for now, we find out that Remy is actually from Hadia, but he was smuggled out of there at the age of 5. And then when he finally grew up, he became a soldier, because he thought this was his his best shot at getting back into Haidea. Eventually, the Truth Serum starts working its magic, and Remy is forced to tell the truth. He reveals that he asked for a transfer to the ON peacekeepers who were deployed inside Haidea. However, when the Civil War started, the peacekeepers pulled out, and he never got the chance to go. So instead, he reported to his new unit, stole some gear, and instead headed across the mountains to get into Haidea on his own. His reasoning for this is after all these years, he wants to find his parents and confront them. But all he remembered was that his father was the blacksmith of the village of Jova. He then also goes on to reveal that it was his mother who smuggled him out when he was young. She left him with a family necklace and the final words of "never come back." From there, we flash back to the main events of the game, where we find Remy in his ON peacekeeper outfit making his way into Haidea. Once he arrives in the country, he quickly changes out of this gear and into civilian clothing. And this is where we finally take control of him and where the game truly begins. At first, all we can do is run through this forest and just look around the environment. And after some exploring, I ended up finding my first collectible of the game, which was a research item, and I would need to find all 45 of these research items to actually get 7 trophies. So we were off to a good start. From there, I continued making my way through the forest until eventually we reached an old farm. Heading down into the basement of the house, we find our first NPC of the game, and with these NPCs you are able to have conversations to gather information in order to continue with the main story, and sometimes they also give you information on some side content and just the lore of the world as well. And unsurprisingly, we would need to talk with all NPCs in order to get a trophy. There is actually a handful of NPCs that can be missed throughout the story, but luckily the missables guide covered all of them, so I wouldn't miss any. This first NPC, Ernest Cadell, must be interacted with to progress the story, but technically he was the first thing I ticked off the missables guide. From our conversation with him, we learn that we are in Sinedra Forest. We then find out that the village of Jova is in Akasa Marshes, which is quite a ways from here, and we would need a vehicle to get there. Thankfully, Ernest actually spotted a group of strange looking soldiers that came by in an APC, so that's our best bet at actually getting a vehicle. He tells us that they parked just beyond the woods to the north, and if we follow the wind chimes, we will arrive where they are. He then gives us a key to his farm gate so we can continue on north. In this basement, we can also find a recording, which is a miscellaneous item, but thankfully we don't have to worry about collecting all of these. These are just items that you can pick up to learn more about the world and its lore. And so heading back outside, we can go over to his gate and we can now open it with the key to continue north. And this is sort of what this game is all about, finding items which allow you to unlock new areas for you to explore and find more stuff. This is where we are also introduced to the data pad, which allows you to keep track of your investigations and what items you've collected so far in the story, and where you can track your collectibles. It's also where you can change your loadout for fighting enemies, but we'll get to this later. Anyway, following the wind chimes, I eventually found where the APC was, along with some dead soldiers. However, we do find one that is still alive, but before talking to him, I decided to do some exploration around the area, and I ended up finding a usable note which hinted at a nearby treasure. And this starts our first mystery. Mysteries are another side activity slash collectible that we would need to complete all of them for a trophy. Now, these mysteries are pretty much puzzles, so they do require a bit of brain power, but this first one was pretty simple. I ended up finding another note at some yellow stones, which provided even more hints to finding this treasure. And so, following the instructions from both of these notes, I found some red stones which had a rusted key. In between, whilst exploring this area, I ended up finding a campsite where the soldiers had been, and here I found an OMSIF medkit, which I would soon find out I would need for the main story actually. In a nearby cave, I also found this door which was locked by a 4-symbol code, but I would find out more about these later. Anyway, continuing on, I ended up finding some blue stones which had the chest that I could now unlock with the key, solving this mystery and getting our first trophy. Place here. Amateur detective, hey, first trophy. Resolve a mystery. Cool. We got the treasure. Okay, what is it? Ooh, Bracelet of Ecstasy, Wanton Destruction. Okay, cool. Cadell family treasure, mystery solved. Awesome. So from this, we got our first loadout piece, which was a defensive gear. There are 2 trophies related to defensive gear, but they are just to do with upgrading them, so we didn't have to really worry about that right now. There is actually 43 mysteries we need to solve in this game, so obviously I'm not going to go through all of them in this video, but I just wanted to go through the first one, because obviously I got a trophy, and just to give you a look at what the mysteries are like. Anyway, moving on from that, I made my way back to the wounded soldier, ticking another NPC off our list. He tells us that he got separated from his unit, who were exploring a tomb behind the door right next to us, and they got attacked by some sort of creatures. He says we need to find the key to the APC and get out of here. Of course though, the sergeant has the key, who is down inside the tomb. He then says that if we get him a med kit from the nearby camp, he will give us something that will help us open the door to the tomb. Of course, I already found the med kit, so I traded it to him, and in return he gives us an ancient mechanism. With this, we are able to climb a nearby ladder, and in some ruins we are able to solve a nearby puzzle using some symbols, and then placing the ancient mechanism in a pedestal. This then opens up the door to the tomb, and we are able to enter inside. Once inside, we actually hear a loud rumble as the door behind us actually collapses, so we can't get back out. Eventually, after making our way far enough into the tomb, we find even more dead soldiers and the creature that caused it.
Fuck.
What the hell?
What the fuck?
My words exactly. This is our first introduction to the Hollow Walkers, and then the enemy that comes out of it, which is a haze. And clearly our bullets aren't doing anything to stop them. And so when everything seems lost as we are about to die to this creature, one of the soldiers who is still alive appears out of nowhere and saves us. Who is this? A female?
Fuck.
Oh no. Is she right? Oh, so we just take her stuff. Interesting. I guess we're just ready for combat now. So yeah, unfortunately she dies, but this then allows us to take her stuff and fight against these enemies on our own. And so here follows the combat tutorial as we learn the basics of fighting in this game, and I can't lie, at first it's actually pretty smooth and fun. After we've defeated our first enemy, we get some shards from it, and these shards that enemies drop is what we use to upgrade our weapons and defensive gear. Nearby, I also found my first consumable item, this one being a med kit, which obviously allows you to heal, and I can't lie, I'm just going to tell you straight up now, med kits were kind of the only consumables I ever used in this game, and the other consumables you get, I kind of forgot to use them, and at the same time you also don't really need them to defeat enemies, so that was a little bit of a disappointing part of the game. A somewhat interesting part of the combat though was the endurance system, as each time you perform an attack or move, it requires stamina, but as your health goes down, you also lose the amount of max stamina you can get, so you kind of always want to be on max health, or else you run out of stamina very quickly when you are fighting enemies. And this leads me to probably the most unique and cool thing about the combat, which is the healing pulse ability. As you deal damage to an enemy, a white circle will appear around you, and if you time it when it is a solid white line by pressing the R1 button, you will get a portion of your health back depending on how much damage you dealt to the enemy. So this actually rewards you for fighting aggressively, which I really liked. However, you have to be careful not to get hit by the enemy or it cancels out the healing pulse, so you can't be too aggressive. Other than that, the combat is pretty similar to a Souls-like game, as you have a normal attack and a heavy attack, and then you can also dodge, block, and parry attacks. When enemies turn red is when you can parry their attacks, and doing so breaks down their guard, and once it's fully depleted, you are able to do a finisher on them, killing them instantly. In this tutorial area, we also find out about drone abilities, and these can help you a lot in combat. However, once the ability runs out, they do have a cooldown timer on them, but this first one we unlock is Distract, so whilst we're fighting one enemy, we can distract the other using the drone and move onto it once we're done with the first enemy. Shortly after that, we also pick up our second weapon, which are Lymbic twin axes. So obviously we got the sword to start off with, but now we are able to use these twin axes, which are a lot faster but do less damage. You can have two weapons equipped at one time, and you can easily switch between the two if need be. A little while after that, we are also introduced to our next variant of the Hollow Walkers, and this one is a bit more deadly as it has blades on its hands and legs, so you can't be too aggressive as it has very quick attacks that you need to block. After defeating that enemy, we are able to make our way out of this underground area, and in doing so we find the sergeant's body, and on him we do indeed find the APC key. Continuing on, we find ourselves in this trench area, and here I found a note along with a golden watch, which clearly belonged to one of Ernest Cadell's sons, and this starts our first good deed. This is another side activity slash collectible we can complete, and there would be 26 of these I would need to complete in order to get 2 trophies. Now this first one was pretty easy, as we learnt from conversation that Ernest's sons were killed by some Sabinian soldiers, so we clearly just need to return the watch to him so he has something to remember his sons by. This good deed in particular was not missable, but a lot of the good deeds were actually missable, so that's why using the missables guide was good, as it covered all the ones that I needed to do in order before reaching certain points in the story. Anyway, before we could complete that though, on my way out of the trenches, I was introduced to linked enemies, which obviously we saw in that cutscene earlier, but now we actually get to fight against a Hollow Walker who has a haze. And the key to defeating these enemies is by taking the haze out first, as whilst the haze is alive, the Hollow Walker is invulnerable, but as soon as the haze is gone, we are able to deal damage to the Hollow Walker. The haze can respawn if you're not quick enough to take the Hollow Walker out, but this time around I was. Following that, I was exploring the area and I found this door locked by this mechanism. This mechanism is used a lot throughout the game, and we will find out more about how to unlock them later on. Continuing to explore, I also killed this enemy nearby when a message popped up saying a time loop guardian was killed. Once again, we will find out more about this later. Continuing down the path from that enemy, we also come to this massive tower, and underneath these stairs leading down to it, I found my first glyph, which are special abilities you can apply to your weapons, and they cost limbic energy to use, which you get by dealing damage to Hollow Walkers. There was actually 75 glyphs to find in this game, but we only needed to find 25 unique glyphs for 2 trophies. The other 50 are just better versions of those unique glyphs. However, I couldn't even equip this glyph yet, as we had to get our weapons to grade 2 first. Anyway, back to the tower, we couldn't actually get in here yet, and wouldn't be until later in the story. So for now, I ended up completing another mystery, and then I finally made my way back to the APC, where unfortunately we find that when the doorway collapsed, it ended up falling on this Omsif soldier, killing him. But this doesn't stop us from using the key to unlock the APC, getting our next trophy. Hey, it's mine now. Acquire a means of transportation. Hell yeah. Next trophy. And yeah, we can finally travel places. Oh, we're actually like inside it. Oh, what the heck? Navigation computer. Open data pad. Exit APC. Okay. And so now that we have the APC, we are able to open up the navigation computer and travel to Akasa Marshes. Of course, we don't actually get to drive the APC, instead we just watch a cutscene as we leave Sinedra Forest and then arrive at Akasa Marshes. In between this first trip though, we do get this really cool opening credits cutscene, which truly shows off the vibes of the game, and it sort of signifies that we have now completed the prologue to the game. And here is of course where we also get the title drop. Following on from that, we get an actual story cutscene where a mysterious female contacts Remy over the radio on the APC. She is clearly the leader of the dead soldiers we found, as she asks where her men are. We tell her what happened, and so she tells us to abandon the vehicle and walk away, and no harm will come to us. Remy, of course, rejects this as he needs the APC for what he's here for, and so she threatens us one more time about being careful of who we've stolen from before the radio goes silent. After that, we then arrive in Akasa Marshes, and following the linear path, we eventually come to a pretty brutal scene, and here we find out that not all NPCs engage in full conversations, but they still do have things of interest to say. In fact, a lot of these smaller NPCs actually relate to good deeds. Thankfully, we don't have to talk to all of these NPCs to get the trophy. It's only the ones that we can have full-on conversations with that count towards this trophy. Anyway, moving on from that, following these signs, I was able to find the village of Jova. The surrounding marshes around the village is actually quite large though, so I did spend a bit of time exploring it. And here I found my next variant of the Hollow Walker, which is the ranged one. And honestly, this has got to be the most annoying type of Hollow Walker variant, as it's the only one that can hit you from afar, and they can get very annoying in groups of enemies when you have to deal with melee ones and they're shooting at you from afar. And there isn't really any ranged attacks in this game to counter them, but thankfully they do go down pretty quick once you get up close and personal with them. Shortly after that, I came across my fourth type of Hollow Walker variant, which are these big shielded guys. And whilst they do have a lot of health and do a lot of damage, they can be quite slow and predictable, so they aren't too bad to take down. Once again, it's more so in groups of enemies that they get hard. Anyway, nearby from that enemy, I also found my first drone module, the Forward Charge. Now obviously we already had the Distract one, but this was actually the first additional one that I found. So I was able to equip it, and it turns out you can have 4 drone abilities equipped. Now these are quite similar to the glyphs, as there was 16 drone modules to find, but we only needed 8 unique ones to get a trophy, and the other 8 are just enhanced versions of each one. Whilst exploring around, I was also fighting new types of haze enemies, as I fought against yellow ones, which were Ecstasy, green ones, which were Terror. Obviously, I'd already fought a red one, which was Rage, and finally the blue ones, which were Grief. I also found my first time loop here in Akasa Marshes, but we can't actually enter or do anything with it yet, so once again we'll find out more about it later. Nearby to the time loop, I found another brutal scene. Like seriously, this game is very dark, and underneath I found a bloodied plushie, which was actually an item I was going to need for a missable good deed coming up. Following that, I finally made my way into the village of Jova, and here at the entrance we could find our next NPC to talk to, and this was Captain Vass, who is technically missable as you can't speak to him later on in the story. We find out that he is the leader of this Sabinian army unit, and they have taken over the village of Jova. So this guy is the man behind all those brutal scenes we've seen, but he recognizes the soldier's outfit we are now wearing, and says he doesn't have any quarrels with us if we just stay out of his way. We of course then ask him about the blacksmith of Jova, and he says he must have left on the ON convoy as he hasn't been able to find him. He doesn't know where the ON convoy was going, but he doesn't think they made it very far from the outpost. He then tells us the outpost is northeast of here on the outskirts of town behind the blacksmith's forge. Before heading over that way though, I made my way to this house which had a tree house outside of it, and I made my way up to the attic of the house where we can find a little girl, which is our 4th NPC to talk to. This was Rebecca, who technically isn't missable, but she does move to a different location later on in the story. Unfortunately, she's been hiding out in her house since the soldiers attacked the village when a bomb killed her parents and baby brother. She does tell us she has an uncle Jaffa, who the soldiers took away to somewhere else in the village. She also tells us that she saw the ON convoy leaving, taking a road behind the ancient monuments that we can see from this roof. From there, I continued to explore the rest of the village, finding more items, including some sheet music which I would need for a missable good deed. After that, I found our next NPC to talk to, and this was indeed Abbot Jaffa, who just like Rebecca isn't missable, but he does move to a different location later on. He tells us he is the spiritual leader of Patham Abbey, which is located just across the marshes from the village, and unfortunately these soldiers have him tied up and are torturing him to try and get information out of him on the treasures that may hide in in the Abbey, even though he says there are none. He also confirms to us that he heard the Owen convoy leave, but he doesn't know where they went, but luckily we already know this from Rebecca. We also confirm to him that his niece Rebecca is okay, which makes him feel better. Following that, I made my way back to near where Vast was, where we can find a man playing the violin, and we can give him the sheet music. However, this does not complete the good deed, as we still need to find another sheet of music in order to fully complete it. I continued to explore the village, where I found this well that takes you down into some catacombs under the village, and down here I ended up finding my first limbic rod. And you know that weird mechanism I showed earlier? Well, these limbic rods are how you open these, but they do need to match the right symbols for it to work. And these all relate to mysteries, so we're gonna have to do all of them. In the western area of these catacombs, I found some baby bottles that were empty, and this starts another missable good deed, as we can find a woman caring for a baby next to these bottles, and she hints that she needs more milk or else the baby is going to starve. And I remembered at this point that I had seen a cow at Ernest Cadell's farm, so I knew that was probably where we were going to get the milk from. So I made my way back to the APC, which thankfully you can fast travel to from save points around the map. And then from there I was able to use the APC to return to Sinedra Forest. I then made my way back to Ernest Cadell, and at this point I remembered I still had to trade him his son's golden watch to complete that good deed, and doing so would get me a trophy. Actually, I could give him this watch, don't I? Otis. Is this?
Thank you for bringing this
Yeah,
work back to me.
it belonged to Otis, my eldest, yeah.
Belong-
Hey, good Samaritan.
My father.
Accomplish a good deed. Let's
Gave
go.
it to me, and I gave it to Otis.
I'll give it to Atticus who comes home. The golden watch, good deed accomplished. So if we go to exploration, yeah, there we go. Good deeds done. Reward may become available for this good deed. May become available. Interesting. After completing that good deed, I was then able to trade him the milk bottles we had, and in return he gives us the baby bottles back, but filled with milk this time. I then made my way back to Akasa Marshes. I then made my way back to the woman with the baby and traded her the milk, and this completes the missable good deed. In the west side of the catacombs where this lady was, there is an exit that leads up into the basement of a house, and inside the house we can find a drunk man who is grieving over his family who has been killed. We can then trade him the bloodied plushie we found earlier, which turns out was his son's favorite toy. He now has something to remember his son by, so he gives us a picture to take away from him, as he can't bear to look at it anymore, as it has his son's face. With this classroom picture, we can then head to a house near where we found Abbot Jaffa, and inside we can find a woman who was the teacher of these children, who is grieving over what has happened. So we are able to trade her the picture, which reminds her of a happy memory and gives her hope that she can return to that one day. And this completes our next missable good deed. Nearby from there, at the back of a house, we can find a letter from a worried wife, which is needed for our next missable good deed. And I could complete this straight away, as back near the entrance of the area where we found this excavator and brutal scene, we are able to trade this letter to this grieving father we found, holding his daughter's body. In the letter was his daughter's rosary, so now he can give her a proper burial, completing this missable good deed. From there, I finally moved on with the main story and made my way to the ON outpost, where I also found a map of where the ON convoy was going. So using the information Rebecca gave us and this map, I was able to follow the tracks of the convoy, which led me to a tunnel. Here I found another new type of weapon, the Limbic pole arm, along with a new drone module. Heading inside the tunnel, I then had to fight my way through a bunch of hollow walkers, and after taking them all down, we find the ON convoy is up in flames. But we can hear voices from the nearby maintenance room, so we head inside and find a wounded ON peacekeeper along with our next NPC. And this is Victor Gaz, who you do need to talk to progress the story. He recognizes the family necklace we have, and we find out that he is the apprentice blacksmith to Vitalis. Trusting us from our necklace for some reason, he gives us the key to Vitalis's home and says there is a locked door in the basement that we might be able to figure out how to open. Now that the creatures are dead, he informs us that he will join us later, waiting for the right moment to return back to Jova. So I made my way straight back to Jova, where near Abbot Jaffa we can find the blacksmith's forge, and opposite that is Vitalis's home, which we can now open with the key. Inside we find some items, including a photo of a young boy who is sitting in a toy car, and we can assume that this is most likely Remy, as we are in the blacksmith's house after all. We also find a picture of a young man and his pregnant wife, who once again is most likely Remy's father and mother. Downstairs in the basement we can also find a chest which we can open with our heirloom necklace. And inside we find a note from our mother to Vitalis vowing revenge on him for some reason. And we also find a third picture which shows Remy and his mother playing together. Further into the basement we can find a spot to hang the pictures on the wall, along with a locked door with a 6-digit keypad. Upon hanging up the pictures in the right order based on the shape of them, we find that all pictures include some sort of car with a number on it, except the final one is faded out, but we can find this exact toy car back upstairs which has the number on it. And so using those 6 numbers in the right order, I was now able to open the locked door. Inside we of course find some more items for us to pick up, including 5 new glyphs, one from each type of limbic sphere. And this automatically unlocked me my next trophy. New glyph. Whoa. My god. Emotional damage. Acquire at least 1 glyph of each limbic sphere. Right. Well, we just got that, like, automatically, I guess. We put these on our weapons, don't we? But we need to upgrade it first, don't we? After that, we then find a note which mentions a meeting with a journalist at the Weeping Night. We also find our 4th and final type of weapon, the Greatsword, and also another letter that mentions Vitalis may be in danger. After that, I made my way back outside, where we find Victor has returned to the blacksmith's forge and opened it up. From talking to him, we unlocked the ability to craft and upgrade limbic items by visiting Victor. He also tells us that he recognized our necklace because Vitalis also had one along with some of his friends who were known as the Vigil. Unfortunately, he doesn't know much more about the Vigil, but when we show him the note, he knows that the Weeping Night is in the Visser Hills. And so this unlocks a new area for us to visit, the Visser Hills, and potentially here we will find Vitalis. Before leaving though, I decided to upgrade my weapons, as we could obviously now do this. And when you're going from grade 1 to grade 2, you can choose which limbic sphere you want your weapon to have. And all the limbic sphere does is determine which glyphs you can apply to the weapon, granting it unique abilities. So for example, on my sword I chose Rage, which meant I could now equip Rage glyphs to it. I did this with all the different types of weapons I had, and then it was time to travel back to the APC, and then use it to head to our new location, the Visser Hills. And straight away I came across the 5th and final variant of the Hollow Walkers, which are these weird looking ones that walk around on their hands and have these big tails which they use to do attacks. And upon defeating it, I got my next trophy. Oh, Big Game Hunter. Defeat all 5 Hollow Walker variants. Oh. Right, we've never fought that one before? Okay, damn. Well, we'll take the trophy. We had indeed not fought that enemy yet. I don't know why I thought that, but I will say it is kind of disappointing that there's only 5 different types of Hollow Walkers. I feel like that's what was severely missing in this game, was the lack of variety of enemies, because after this you just face those same 5 over and over again. Anyway, following on from that, I found the Weeping Night statue, and at the bottom of it we can find a dying Omsif soldier who tells us that they fled northeast over the hill. And sure enough, in that direction we can hear gunshots. Before heading over that way though, I did some exploring and I ended up finding the 2nd sheet music we needed to finish off that missable good deed. I then made my way over to where the gunshots were coming from, and we found some dead Omsif soldiers along with a dying old man. And this ends up being our next NPC we have to talk to. At first he thinks we've come to finish him off, but then he recognizes our necklace and a cutscene begins playing, and we find out that this is indeed Vitalis and also our father. He doesn't have much time left, so he explains to us that he is a vigil sworn to protect Hadia, but they failed to stop the calamity. But hope stands before him as he believes Remy can continue his mission. He then gives Remy this item which is called the Keystone of Grief, and then tells him to find the journalist and Agatha. He tells us he saw them escaping to the rocky ridges to the southwest towards the old windmill. He then asks Remy one more time to promise to stop the calamity, and so he promises to. Before he dies, Remy asks about his mother, and Vitalis' final words are, "Your mother is dead. Vitalis then unfortunately passes away. We then cut back to the interrogation in present day, where the interrogator asks why Remy continued with the mission. He saw that his father had an undying purpose, which Remy never had. And so in that moment, he felt a connection, not to Vitalis, but the country he was born in, Hadia. From there, we cut back to the past, where we now have the Keystone of Grief, and Remy has buried his father. Once again, it was then back to exploring, where I found a pill bottle, which was needed for another missable good deed. In fact, just to the north of the area, I could finish it off straight away, as we can find a woman camping out here who says she dropped her suitcase which had her medication. We can also find an old couple here who hint that they left their dog behind in the village of Jova, and this is a missable good deed we will come back to later. For now, I traded the woman her pill bottle, which saves her life as she needed this medication, and in turn we complete the good deed. After that, I made my way southwest towards the old windmill like our father said, but unfortunately here we find a dead body surrounded by hollow walkers with the ID card Agatha Marin, along with a carved emblem in the shape of a book. Even though Agatha was dead, I continued to explore looking for the journalist. And can I just say, this place has heaps of mine shafts with long ass ladders that take forever to climb up and down, and this is one of my biggest gripes with the game, is how long it takes to scale ladders. But later on in the video you will find out that I was kind of being an idiot. Anyway, after exploring for a bit, I ended up finding our next NPC, which wasn't the journalist, but it was instead a man named Atticus. He tells us that he escaped from a nearby prison camp with some others, which were those people we found at that other camp nearby. He then tells us that he has seen a truck that is in good shape nearby and is trying to find the keys for it so he can get it started and head back to Sinidra Forest because his father is Ernest Cadell. We ask him about the journalist and he says that he saw two women get attacked and one of them escaped to the north. Instead of heading north, I actually continued south to explore the area, and here I came across this enemy which actually had two hazes come out of it. And after defeating those two hazes, I actually ended up getting a trophy.
Two of these is crazy.
Oh, rise and fall. Defeat 40 hazes of tier 1. Oh, okay. Is that what they're called? Hazes? Actually, yeah, that's right. Yeah. After defeating that enemy, there was a locked door here where I could actually place the book emblem I found earlier. However, we needed an emblem on the other side to open the door. So I continued to explore pretty much the whole area, and in the end, I actually ended up killing the final time loop guardian, and I knew this because it made this sound.
Damn, that thing does so much damage. Wait, does that mean we can now go into the time loop? Is that what that sound meant? Because that was really loud.
It did indeed. However, as soon as I entered the time loop, I couldn't actually do much in here as we needed a specific item in order to shut it down, which I didn't have right now. So I would have to exit and come back later. After doing some more exploring, I finally realized I had missed a little side path, so I headed down there and we finally found the journalist. And this was, of course, our next NPC we had to talk to, and her name was Tanya Alva. We give her a passcode that Vitalis told us to say to her, and once she hears that, she realizes we're on the same team. She tells us that Vitalis was the source of her story that she is writing, and he was taking her to the Vigil headquarters when they got ambushed. She tells us the headquarters is called the Watcher's Nest, and it is west of where we are, and it turns out it is already the doorway that we actually found earlier. She tells us we need 2 keys to open the door. Vitalis gave her one, and the other one was given to Agatha. Of course though, we already found Agatha and know she's unfortunately dead, but we do have the key. Tanya then tells us she'll wait for us at our APC, whilst we go open the door and explore the Watcher's Nest. So I made my way back to the door, and using the candle emblem, I was now able to enter inside the Watcher's Nest. Right as we enter, we find a note from Vitalis telling the other Vigil members that they must open Pentos's coffin. And the way to do so is by using this riddle alongside the wall grooves found in the Watcher's Nest. Inside the nest, we can find plenty of environmental clues that will help us solve the riddle. Further into the nest, we can find Pentos's coffin along with 4 ceramic flowers we can place throughout the nest in order to open up his coffin. So the first ceramic flower I placed down matched the year his order was created, which was 1513 on the right of this blue banner. Next up, I placed the flower which matched the symbol of the order he created, which was the Vigil. The third flower I placed where it matched his last name, Algia. And finally, I had to place the last flower which matched his title, which was the Warden of Grief. And sure enough, I headed back near the entrance to the Watcher's Nest, where I found the symbol of grief and placed the final flower, and as a result, in the distance I heard a noise to signify the coffin could now be opened. And sure enough, we were now able to pull the lever, opening the coffin. Inside we find our first relic, which is another item that you can add to your loadout and gives you certain abilities or buffs, and we would need to find all 29 of these for 2 trophies. The only reason these are missable is because most relics are tied to good deeds, and obviously some of the good deeds are missable, so as long as we do all the good deeds, all the relics are possible to get. Anyway, in the coffin we also find this blue flower scroll. We then find out Tanya has actually taken control of our drone now that she's back at the APC and can talk to us through it, and she tells us to bring the scroll back to the APC as she has found something that can help us. Before heading back to the APC though, we can hear a toilet flush in the Watcher's Nest, and heading back up into the main room we can find our next NPC to talk to. This is Gildas Brom, and he is the oldest member of the Vigil, and so he is the caretaker of everything here in the Watcher's Nest. And he is one of the last Vigil members, as most of them have been hunted down by Omsif soldiers. Unfortunately, he doesn't recognize anything from the blue flower scroll, and he also doesn't know for sure what the Keystone of Grief is, but he does tell us the duties a Vigil must perform now that we are a member. Of course, there are good deeds to help Hadeans, which we've already been doing, and our other task is to slay all of the creatures. However, at this point I had noticed that each time I left an area they all respawned, and so the only way to stop them from doing this would be to shut down the time loop. Of course, like I discovered earlier, in order to enter a time loop we first have to kill all of the time loop guardians, and so Gildas gives us a guardian detector which sort of acts as a compass to the nearest time loop guardian in the area. After that I was then able to claim all of the rewards from the good deeds that I had been doing, and then after that I asked how we can shut down time loops. He explains that time loops are moments in time charged with extreme violence and have cursed those trapped inside to keep reliving the moment over and over again. He explains that the only way to shut it down is to bring an amine prism to the center of the time loop. However, the center is deadly to humans, but lucky for us our drone should be able to do the job, and so Gildas gives us his last amine prism he's got, which is a Sigma one, and just like good deeds, when we shut down time loops we can get rewards for them, and so of course I would need to shut down all 14 time loops in the game, plus defeat every enemy in the game to get 2 trophies. So of course I'd already defeated every time loop guardian here in the Vissa Hills, so I was able to enter the time loop. And so for example, the moment of violence here is some soldiers gunning down some civilians who were just trying to escape. And this caused the time loop to form, and then all of the creatures spawn out of said time loop. And so it makes sense as to why the calamity has occurred during this civil war. But anyway, this time loop was a tier Sigma signature, so it meant the amine prism Sigma would work to shut it down. And doing so, of course, got me a trophy. End the suffering. Close a time loop. Holy crap, it's loud.
There they are!
Time loop Visa Hills. Okay, so we got a trophy for closing a time loop, if you couldn't hear what I said. On one of the dead bodies from the time loop, I found the keys to the ON vehicle, which started another missable good deed. However, I was told not to do this good deed until I had completed another one, or else I would stuff the other one up. So for now, I returned back to the APC, where we find Tanya waiting inside for us. She tells us that the computer on board is linked to something called the Zeal server, which she believes is owned by the Zeal Council, but she has no idea who or what they are. But this server has a vast database containing the history of Haidea. However, she only has limited access for now, but over time she should be able to get more. She then says she wants to piece it all together, and obviously we want to stop it, and so she offers up a partnership for the two to work together, as she proves that she can be of use, and so Remy agrees to let her tag along with him. And so this unlocks the ability to research, so we can now bring all our research items to Tanya to learn more about Haidea and to uncover vaults of forbidden knowledge. So obviously I mentioned earlier that there were 7 trophies related to research items. Well, we would actually have to come to Tanya to research them in order for them to count towards the trophy. Once we had researched enough items, we would also build up enough research data to find out about a vault of forbidden knowledge, and I would get 1 trophy for completing one of these. For now though, we show Tanya the blue flower scroll, and she is able to translate it, and it comes out as a riddle, but first we need to find the location for it. So she suggests to us that we should go chat to some locals and ask where this blue flower grows. So it was time to make our way back to the Akasa marshes. On the ride there, we are once again contacted by this mysterious lady, and she threatens us once again, telling us that it's only a matter of time before she IDs who we are, as she will then target the people we care about. She then cuts off the radio there. Remy and Tanya realize they don't have much time, so they need to figure out this mystery and stop the calamity as quick as they can. Now that we were back in the village of Jova, I was able to give the second sheet of music to this violin player here, which finally completed this missable good deed. From there, I went and spoke with Abbot Jaffa, and of course he knows the blue flower very well, as he explains to us that it blooms in a location known as Lake Sinan. And he tells us that he plans on bringing Rebecca there once this is all over, as it is a nice, peaceful place, away from everything. And so this unlocks us Lake Sinan, so we can now head there and explore it. So I hopped back in the APC and headed there straight away. Once again on the way there, we are contacted by the lady, and she tells us that they have identified Tanya. However, they have not been able to identify Remy yet. But she does anger him as she asks who he buried, saying your brother, sister, mother, and then Remy replies and says his father, and his name was Vitalis, but he's sure she already knew that. She doesn't respond, and instead the radio just goes silent. Following that, we arrive in Lake Sinan, which I must say is very beautiful. And here we do indeed find plenty of the blue flowers, so we're obviously in the right spot. Whilst exploring around the area, I ended up finding my first cap, which I was able to equip straight away. And once again, this was another collectible, as I would have to find all 10 baseball caps and wear them for a trophy. In the middle of this area was this man-made pond-like thing, and this related to the scroll we found earlier. And in order to solve it, we had to hit these crystals in a certain order based on symbols and hints we could find around in the environment that told us the order. Once I had hit all of the crystals in the right order, it opened up a hole in the wall which had a gear spindle, and a stone structure had risen out of the water which also had a gear, and we were able to combine the two together, which started draining the water from this area. Once the water had all drained away, we found a doorway at the bottom that we could now enter into. And so this was another underground maze-like area for us to explore, with plenty of different paths to take. And of course, there was also plenty of enemies down here for us to fight against. Eventually we come to a room where, just like the Vigil headquarter, we had to find 2 different emblems in order to unlock the door. And we could find these by exploring some of the side rooms. But here is also where I started getting introduced to grade 2 enemies, as you can see by the 2 symbol above their heads. And these are definitely a lot stronger and harder to take down, especially when my weapons were still fairly weak. So I did die a couple of times, but eventually I managed to get through all the enemies and find the 2 emblems, and so that meant I could now finally open the door. In the next room I found another locked door that we needed an item to open, but first we had to drain all the water out of this place using this massive gear system. And so after some exploring, I found a spoked gear, and I was able to place it on the left side of the machine and pull the lever, and this drained half of the water from this area, which of course opened up new areas for us to explore and more enemies to fight. But eventually, after making my way through this new area, I found a large gear. I was then able to return back to the machine and place this on the right side, and this drained the rest of the area. And down here I found a limbic door with one of these mechanisms, mechanisms, and I actually had all 3 limbic rods I needed, meaning this was the first limbic door or mechanism I was able to actually open. Inside these you typically just find rewards like glyphs and relics. Down in this bottom area I also found an elevator, and this took me down to this massive cave-like area where there was a time loop. In front of it though we could find an enemy, and as soon as we entered into this area the gate behind us closed, and this was almost like our first boss fight of the game, as this big guy had a haze come out of him which surprisingly was named above its health bar, and then when I defeated it, it split into 3 smaller hazes which all had their own individual names as well, when normally hazes wouldn't have a name, and they kept splitting into more and more hazes every time I defeated them, which again doesn't normally happen, so that's what makes this feel like a boss fight. In the end I think it was more like a mini boss fight, as it wasn't too difficult and I managed to pull it off first time. Once I had defeated that enemy, I ended up finding an amine prism Sigma, and I was also able to pull this lever to open the coffin, and inside I found a relic and the hammer of Modus, and a book called The Fundamentals of Lymbic Forging, which I found out from the game was a crafting tome which we could give to Victor to study, which would then improve his crafting skills, allowing us to upgrade our weapons further. After that I did try and enter the time loop, but it turns out that I hadn't taken out all of the guardians yet, so I couldn't. Anyway, now that I had the hammer of Modus, I was able to place it in this door, which finally opened it up. Inside this room we have some more enemies to take out, and after taking them out there was 4 pillars with 4 different colored masks on them, which were tied to keeping this door locked. However, it was quite clear that this blue one had the symbol that matched the Keystone of Grief, and so I was able to place it in the slot, and this unlocked my next trophy.
Hey, so it begins. Complete Act 1. Let's go. Trophy time.
After placing this first keystone in, it unlocks the first lock from the door, but obviously we still had 3 more to go. We do know that whatever is behind this door is what will end the calamity. So Tanya takes some pictures of the other symbols and faces, and we then cut back to the present for another check-in, where we find out this mysterious organization has also been interrogating Victor and Tanya. The interrogator then asks us how we got access to some very restricted files on the Zeal server, and Remy says he's getting to that. We then cut back to the past where Tanya says she has all she needs, and once we return to the APC, she'll let us know everything that she has found out about the symbols. So I quickly made my way back to the APC, and talking to Tanya, we now have the choice to pursue the other 3 symbols in whatever order we like. I ended up speaking to Tanya about all 3 of the symbols, gathering as much information as possible, and from that I unlocked a few new areas to explore, including Leith, the Ministry of Cultural Primacy, Jeljan, and finally Talju. However, before heading to any of those new locations, it was time to deal with some of the missable good deeds. However, on the way back to the Akasa Marshes, the lady contacts us on our APC radio again, and we can now actually see her face. She tells us that she is no longer our enemy due to some new information that has come to light. As a show of good faith, she sends us a code, meaning we will now be able to access more information on the Zeal server. She then ends by saying she will contact us again as soon as she can. So Tanya proceeds to try the access code, and it actually works, meaning we do actually have a new ally, and that is how we got access to the restricted files that the interrogator was talking about in the interrogation scene. Anyway, back in the Akasa Marshes, I was able to give Victor the study tome we found, and this meant I could now upgrade defensive gear to grade 3 and weapons to grade 5. Unfortunately, at this stage in the game though, I only had enough shards to get a few weapons to grade 4, so I was going to have to save up and defeat more enemies in order to get to grade 5. Moving on from there, I headed into the main area of the village of Jova, and next to one of the houses we can find this dog, which previously was being looked after by a soldier, but that soldier is now gone in Act 2, so we are able to release the dog and get its collar. And this starts the next missable good deed. Following on from that, we are now able to return to the Vissa Hills, and heading back to the campsite where we gave the woman her pill bottle, we are able to give the dog collar to the old man here, who knows that his dog is now safe and out of the soldier's hands. And as a result, this completes the missable good deed. Now that we've completed the 2 missable good deeds in that campsite, we are able to return to Atticus Cadell and complete his missable good deed deed without any penalty, as we give him the keys to the ON truck that we found in the time loop here, and with this he is able to head back to the camp and use the truck to get them all out of here. And so if we did this missable good deed first, we wouldn't have been able to do those other good deeds as they would have left this area. Anyway, now with those done, we were able to head to our first new area, and going off the guide, I decided to go to Taoju first. Arriving in Taoju, we find that it is a small town that has been consumed by fire and smoke, along with a bunch of hollow walkers. Nearby to where we arrive in the APC, we can find a mechanic shop, and inside we find the town's mechanic, who is the next NPC we have to talk to, and his name is Boro Juven. We ask him if he knows where Caspian Fran is, as Caspian knows more about one of the symbols we found relating to the Keystones. Boro gives us a map of Taoju with Caspian's home circled, and he also tells us that he might be located at the town hall as well, which is marked as number 1. Now that I had the map, I was able to explore around Taoju. I ended up finding Caspian's home first, however the only door to get into his home was through the basement and it was locked. So I continued to explore the area until eventually I found myself outside of the town hall, where I found 4 signal flares, and this actually starts up 4 missable good deeds that we would need to do next. I then made my way inside of the town hall, which is where I found the next NPC to talk to, which was of course Caspian Fran. He tells us that he got separated from his son Lucan, and so he asks us if we can find him by checking either the playground or the school, and he gives us this walkie-talkie which we can give to Lucan, and Caspian will take it from there. We can ask him about the symbol of the screaming face, but he pretty much tells us that he's not going to tell us anything until we save Lucan. So from there I continued to explore the town, and in one of the houses opposite the town hall upstairs I could find this woman, and we can trade her one of the signal flares which she sets off outside on the balcony, meaning the other people in the town hall will be able to find where she is, and when they evacuate they can find her and take her with them. After that I found the playground that Caspian was talking about, where we do find Lucan's ID card along with the keys to Caspian's house. Continuing on, I found a farmhouse at the back of the town, and once again upstairs I found another person who I could trade a signal flare to. So this was 2 out of the 4 that we needed to save. In the back of the house upstairs I also found my next cap, and I found the Taoju time loop next to the farmhouse, but I still hadn't defeated all of the guardians yet. Nearby to the farmhouse I found the school, and out the back of it was a storage room where I found Lucan hiding inside. After talking to him, we are then able to trade him the walkie-talkie, and so he is able to contact Caspian and let him know where he is. So whilst Caspian comes to collect Lucan, in the meantime we are able to continue exploring Taoju, and so I headed back to Caspian's house and used his key to get inside, and down here I of course just found some more collectibles. After that I made my way back to Boro Juven and traded him one of the signal flares, and then from there I made my way to the back of the Vandalin Trust building, where I could head upstairs and defeat some enemies and find a flame symbol along with a map of the Sinedra Mountains, and these actually start up another missable good deed. Also in another room of this building I was able to find another woman who I was able to trade the final signal flare to, completing all 4 of these missable good deeds relating to the signal flares. With that done, I could now return to the town hall to talk to Caspian, but before he tells us more about the symbol, he asks if we can get rid of the remaining creatures outside which are blocking the way to a truck that will help them get out of the town. So with the parking lot key he gave us, I was now able to open the security booth, and inside on the computer activate the command to open the gate. Now with the gate open, I was able to enter into the parking lot, where I had to take out this creature which had 3 hazers coming out of it, but once I had done that I was able to continue on with the story. However, I noticed that it was a time loop guardian that I killed, so I decided to pull out the guardian detector and try and find the rest of the time loop guardians so I could potentially get rid of the time loop and not worry about having to take down any of these enemies again. In the end, I actually found the last time loop guardian, as it turned out it was the final one left, but when I made my way to the time loop, it turned out that it was a theta signature time loop, and I only had a sigma amine prism, so I couldn't even shut it down anyway. So I just made my way back to Caspian instead, and he finally tells us the symbol represents the matron saint of southern Aragola, also known as the Blood Queen, and so he tells us if we want to find out more we should head to Matistan Madastan next, which has a statue of the Blood Queen herself. After he tells us that, we then see the ON truck leaving with all the citizens of Taoju, including the ones that we gave the signal flares to, officially completing those good deeds, and that's why they're technically missable, as they will leave them behind if you don't give them the signal flares. With the truck gone, I could now also access the pharmacy by using a key that I had found nearby to the playground, and inside we are able to find a pill bottle of metformin, which of course starts up another missable good deed. With that all done, before I headed to Madastan, I first headed back to Sinedra Forest, because here I was able to head back to the trench area, and heading down one of these side trenches you can find a ruin, which using the flame symbol we picked up in Taoju, we are able to open it and find some people hiding out inside. The woman thanks us for saving them, however she does say they don't know how to make their way through the mountains, but obviously with the flame symbol we also found a map of the Sinedra mountains, so we are able to trade that to her, completing this good deed. Now following that, I made my way to the new location of Madastan. Here there wasn't actually any missable good deeds for us to worry about, only some NPCs we had to talk to, so I did a lot of my own exploring in this area, but eventually when I headed up to the main town, I found our first NPC here to talk to, who was up on this balcony, and this guy's name was Talus. He tells us that Palamus soldiers have taken over the town and they've made him the caretaker of the giant statue as a sort of punishment, as to Sabinians it symbolizes oppression. We ask him how we can get into the statue, and he says that if we kill some creatures nearby in front of the church, he'll give us the key to open the gate to get into the statue. So I headed down to the front of the church and began taking out the enemies here, and whilst I was doing this, I actually ended up getting my next trophy. Oh, Fall Guy. Defeat 40 hazes of tier 2. Okay. I mean, how do you know they're tier 2? I actually don't know how you know that, but I guess we'll take the trophy, eh? Now obviously I've explained to you that the 2 is above the enemy's head, but at this point in the game I for some reason hadn't noticed this yet, but I did figure it out eventually. After defeating those creatures I returned back to Talus, and as a thank you he gives us the key. I then made my way southwest of his location where I found the gate, and I was able to use the key to unlock it, and heading through this leads us into a cave, and following the main path eventually led to a ladder, and climbing it led inside the head of the giant statue. Here we get a hint to where the Blood Queen's resting place is, as we can see it through the telescope looking out of the eye, which points to a cliff with some hanging coffins on it along with a door at the bottom. On the back wall we also get another hint, which says the means to reach the queen is buried amongst the eagles, and when the 6 face eastward we will discover its secrets. From this I knew exactly where I had to go, but on the way back I knew there was another NPC I could talk to at the bottom of the statue, and this NPC was Father Bramante. But honestly this guy doesn't really serve much purpose, he doesn't really add anything to the story and you don't have to talk to him, but obviously we did for the trophy, but I would say he's kind of just an evil version of Abbot Jaffa. Following on from that, I made my way back towards the church, because downstairs from there we can find a cemetery, which I had come across earlier, and I knew that there were eagle statues here that we could turn. Then all I had to do was turn all 6 of them towards the east, and upon turning the 6th one to the east, a crypt door opened up. Heading down inside, I had some enemies to take out, and after that there were 3 different paths that I could take from this main room. Following the first one led to an angled tablet fragment, the second path led to a square one, and finally the last path led to an oblique one. Once I had those 3 tablet fragments, I then made my way into the forest towards the hanging coffins on the cliff. Once I made it to the bottom of this cliff, I found the doorway inside, but in order to open it I had to place the fragment pieces down on the floor outside, and this reveals 4 pillars that come up on the corners of the floor, but then all we had to do was match each symbol corresponding to the tablet on the floor, and this finally opened up the doorway leading inside. Inside we find her coffin along with another puzzle to solve in order to open it. On the walls of this room we can find murals with descriptions recounting the events of how the Blood Queen came to be, and based on these murals and descriptions we are able to figure out the order of the symbols in order to open her coffin. And after getting the order right, her coffin does indeed slide to the side inside, and this reveals the Sword of the Blood Queen, along with the Queen's eulogy, which pretty much says that she was the one that built the tower, aka the Arcus Spire in the Sinedra Forest, and her instrument of vengeance here, the sword, is the way to get inside the spire. So from there, I made my way back to the APC and then headed for Sinedra Forest. I then made my way to the Arcus Spire, and using the Sword of the Blood Queen, I was indeed now able to open the door and head inside. As I began making my way through the tower, there were a lot of enemies to fight, including whole swarms of Hollow Walkers, but thankfully these ones were quite weak, so they were easy to take down. Eventually we find ourselves heading down into an underground part of the spire, and here we find a massive, and I mean massive, pile of bones. And so throughout the spire we slowly begin to realize that the Blood Queen was a palamist, and her goal was literally to get rid of all of the Sabinians in Hadia, so they would capture the Sabinians and bring them here to the spire and then kill them, trying to erase all of them. So yeah, pretty much a genocide of a whole race of people. I'm telling you, this game is really dark. Eventually we do find an elevator which takes us back up into the spire, and we continue making our way through swarms of enemies and towards the top of the spire. Eventually we come across a puzzle room which has 6 levers that are covered by cages, and there are 3 levels where we can find pressure plates relating to a certain letter and number, and stepping on the correct ones will open up the cages below so we can flick the lever. However, each pressure plate does damage to us. Another thing to note is that each pressure plate you stand on opens up the 2 cages directly next to it, which nearly always have enemies in them, so that's just another obstacle to deal with. But you also find out that the letters that end with a 4 actually opens up all of the cages in that area on the floor, so all of the enemies come out. And I actually did this first because remember, I do have to defeat every single enemy in the game, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss any. After doing all that, then my focus was to flip all of the levers. 3 of the levers open up doors to side rooms where you can find some collectibles, and the other 3 levers open up the main door to continue higher up into the spire. And when I got to that point, I can't lie, I was very thankful to be done with that room. After that, we eventually make it to the top where we reach a door which has another study tome for us to give to Victor, along with 2 Amine prisms, along with a note from General Arlon who says we can find the next keystone within the time loop at the top of the spire. And sure enough, heading through the door, we find ourselves outside at the top of the spire with a giant time loop in the middle. However, before closing the time loop, I had to make my way around the top of the spire, defeating the rest of the enemies, including the rest of the time loop guardians. Once I had done that, I was now able to enter the time loop, and here we see some of the Blood Queen soldiers executing innocent Sabinians by pushing them off the edge into the abyss below, which explains the pile of bones at the bottom of the tower. Anyway, using my Amine prism Theta, because it was a Theta signature time loop, I was able to shut it down, and once gone, this reveals the Keystone of Terror lying on the floor. However, when we go to pick up the keystone, we are actually teleported inside of it, and this starts a boss fight, surprisingly. In this arena, we find a bunch of pillars, and one of them is always being lit up by the green Terra energy, and we have to keep following it around the arena until eventually a tier 3 Terra haze spawns in. We then obviously fight against this tier 3 haze, slowly lowering its health down until I defeated it and got a trophy, but probably not the one you're expecting. Harry, hey, there we go. Fear no evil. Defeat all 3 Haze of Terror variants. Wait, so we defeated it? Still got like all of its health though. Indeed, the fight was not over yet, as that was only the first phase. We once again had to keep chasing after the green glowy pillars, but this time we had tier 1 hazes in our way, along with rotating walls that dealt damage. Eventually the tier 3 haze does spawn in once again, and after dealing another third of its health, this does end the second phase. Once again we have to chase the green pillars, but this time there are walls blocking our paths, so we're forced to dodge the rotating walls and enemies in a more narrow space. Eventually the tier 3 haze does spawn in once again, and so I just simply had to defeat it once again, taking out the rest of its health and finishing off the boss fight, and we then return to the real world where we are rewarded with the Keystone of Terror. Now that we had the keystone, we find an elevator nearby and we are able to return to the bottom of the spire. So now with 2 keystones down, it was time to begin looking for the other 2. But first I began by heading back to the Akasa Marshes. On the way back, we are once again contacted by this mysterious lady who reveals that she knows our name is Remy Latam. She then goes on to reveal that she is Lieutenant Arabeth of the OMSIF's Epsilon Division, but she is also known as Arabeth Latam, wife of Vitalis Latam and the mother of a young boy she set free. And so the big reveal is that yes, she was our mother all along, and that's why she's on our side now. She then says if we want to find out why she was hunting down the Vigil and Vitalis, we should go to the OMSIF camp in Akasa Marshes, where we will find a file on a laptop. However, we will need a code to open the camp's gate, so she says to look underneath the passenger seat of the APC and there will be a code sheet inside a box, and today's code is 14. She then says she will contact us again later. Arriving in the Akasa Marshes, I gave the study tome to Victor and upgraded some more of my gear. I then actually got back into the APC, but for some reason, instead of looking for the code sheet that she mentioned, I instead headed to my next new location, which was Leith, the Ministry of Cultural Primacy. Here we find Leith, the capital of Hadia, in ruins, but thankfully the ministry is still standing. At first we find ourselves in the car park of the building, but heading inside underneath some stairs I found my next cap. I then headed up the stairs until I reached the correct floor, and making my way through the ministry's offices we eventually find Martin Roust, the man that we were looking for who had information on the next keystone, but unfortunately we find him indisposed. So we have to look around ourselves to gather the information that we need. So we continue making our way through the building where we find the people that killed Martin, as they were angry at the government for what this civil war has caused. In one of these side rooms I found an ON soldier who was hiding from these people, and little did I know at the time, but talking to her was the biggest mistake I could have made. Moving on though, in a separate side hallway I found a ranged hollow walker with a side room attached to it, and inside this room we find our next NPC to talk to, whose name is Maeve Tristana, and we had to make sure to talk to her before we defeated that ranged hollow, or else the game wouldn't count it as us talking to this NPC. We find out that she was the secretary to Martin, and that's why she's hiding out in this room, and the only reason she can't escape is because of that ranged hollow. And so very similar to Caspian, we ask her about the symbol of the charioteer, but she won't tell us anything until we save her. However, at this point I realized that I had gone to the wrong location, as I was trying to follow the Order of the Missables guide, and the next location we were meant to go to was actually Leith, but the National Library, not the Ministry of Cultural Primacy. Now honestly, it didn't really matter which order I did it in. I could have easily just finished up here and then gone to the National Library after this, but for some reason I just find myself getting OCD with these sort of things and needing to do it in the order. So I made my way back down to the car park, and in a lower separate part of the car park I found this key card, which you will find out was quite important and could have easily prevented this mistake I was about to make. Instead, I got back into the APC and headed back to the Akasa Marshes, and I should not have done this, but we will get to that soon. Anyway, back in the APC I actually looked for the code sheet this time, and sure enough, under the passenger seat we are able to gather a new drone module along with the code sheet that Arabeth mentioned. Counting down from the top, I could see that the 14th one was the code 151991. I then made my way over to the OMSIF camp and input the code, and sure enough the gate opened. This opens up a new area for us to explore to find more collectibles and kill some more enemies. We also find the computer file that Arabeth was talking about, which reveals that she tried escaping Hadia alongside us. However, she was caught and sent to prison, but then the reason she joined OMSIF is because she finds out that the phone records informing the border guards of her escape came from her husband Vitalis. So that's why she agreed to join and give them vital information on the Vigil so she could hunt down Vitalis and get her revenge. This information will become more important later on, but for now I made my way towards Patham Abbey, as this was the other location we needed to head to find out more about the other keystone. Previously, this place was blocked off by some of Captain Vars's men, but heading inside the abbey we find that him and all of his men are now dead, as they entered the abbey looking for the treasure they thought was here, but instead was killed by the Hollow Walkers that had infested this place, as there is a time loop down here. Down here in the abbey, we also find Abbot Jaffa, who Captain Vast brought along, but thankfully he was able to escape and survive. We tell him we're looking for the Gospel of Terror, and we ask him if he knows where it is, and he says he does know the book with that symbol on it, as it used to be stored in the abbey, but then they sent it off to the National Library in Leith to get it restored as it was decaying. So talking to him finally unlocked the National Library, and I could now head there. So I went back to the APC and headed there straight away. We arrive at the back of the library, but we are able to head inside and begin looking for the restoration department, which we actually find downstairs in the basement. However, we find the room with the book in it locked by a passcode, where after exploring and making our way through the library, I eventually found our next NPC upstairs, and his name was Iblis. After asking him where the book restoration department is, which we already know, he tells us that's where Locke works and he wears a yellow jacket. We ask him where we can find Locke, and he says that he got separated with him near the cafeteria, and he left him there and locked him behind the door. So he gives us the keys to open this door so we can find Locke. Back downstairs, we are able to find this locked door, and using the keys we are able to get inside. But on the other side, we do find a Hollow Walker along with a man wearing a yellow jacket dead on the floor, presumably Locke. On his body, we do find a note that has the restoration office code but in a riddle. However, it's pretty easy to decipher, as it says Embry has the answer, which clearly means the Embry Hall, as there are signs everywhere up saying this, and this is just the main area of the library where the books are kept. And in this main area, I had already previously found books which related to the rest of the riddle. So example, the Foundation of Leith, there is a book I found that directly relates to this and says the city of Leith was founded in 537 AD. The other part of the riddle, the creation of the Lublina Alliance, there is a book that says the alliance was created in 734 AD. So I headed back downstairs to the book restoration department, and sure enough, 537, 734 worked and the door opened. Inside, we do indeed find the Gospel of Terror, which mentions the Visser Hills. Along with that, we also get a twin-headed serpent artifact, and I knew exactly what to do with this, so it was time to head back to the Visser Hills. Before leaving though, I did open the boot of this car outside, where I found my next hat as well. I then made my way back to the Visser Hills, where previously I had found this chest, but I had never been able to open it, but now with the twin-headed serpent I was able to, and inside I found the token of the serpent. With this, I headed over to a location that I had previously found too, which was the entrance to this gigantic stone carved serpent, and placing the token of the serpent in the door finally opened it up. Climbing up the serpent, I found another door to continue climbing up the serpent, and this one needed the token of the moon, which I could find in some ruins nearby. However, the gate was closed, but I was able to find a mine key, and some graffiti nearby said to enter the mine entrance near the water tower in order to climb up inside these ruins. However, before heading over to that mine, I found another mine nearby in this area, and inside I found my next cap. Following on from that, I made my way to the mine underneath the water tower, which I had been down before, but now that I had the mine key, I was able to open up doors that I hadn't previously been able to do and explore new areas. And after exploring and following this mouse symbol on the walls, I found the ladder which led up into the ruins, where I found a chest with the token of the moon in it. I was then able to unlock the door out of the ruins, and then using the token of the moon symbol, I was able to continue up the serpent. Eventually, I reached another area full of ruins, where I found a time loop, and in the middle of a bunch of Hollow Walker statues, I found a chest with the token of the palm. With the token of the palm, I was now able to open up the final doorway in the serpent, and I actually ended up getting a trophy here. Hey, Keymaster. Solve 25 puzzles that require the right item. There you go. Let's go. Another trophy finally, holy shit, an hour and 50 later. Inside this last part of the serpent, we find this creepy cult church-like area where they were obviously praying to the god Terror, who is sort of seen as the evil one. Here we find a letter written by Queen Vigor offering a land grant to an upstart religious movement run by Francis Aldrich. As a way to resolve their conflicts in the past, the Queen offers up a territory in the north of Gehenna subterranea known as the Plains of Mist to the church, so they can practice their evil cult stuff away from everyone. And so of course that is the next location that we unlock. After making my way out of the church, I then found the last time loop guardian that I had to kill. However, in the end I couldn't actually shut down the time loop as I needed a theta amine prism and I did not have one. So instead I made my way back to the APC, where for some reason instead of continuing on to the Plains of Mist, instead I made my way back to the Ministry of Cultural Primacy, because here I wanted to finish off the final missable good deeds that I could have done earlier, but I left to go to the National Library first. And here is where I finally realized that I had made a massive mistake. In the Missables guide, it clearly states, do not leave this area until you complete good deed number 22, because when you leave, the ON soldier will be killed and you won't be able to complete it. And of course, what did I do? I left the area.
5, 10, 15, 20. So it must be this one. So we haven't actually discovered it yet, so hopefully we're safe then. Okay, here we can swipe the card. What do we got from downstairs bit?
Citizens report of seditious activity.
Woman's clothing.
Investigation.
Okay, there we go. We've started incognito. Okay, so now we can't leave. And we got the satellite radio.
Follow up on case number
Okay, sick.
197.
Okay, so now we can't leave. Oh, she is dead. Oh, fuck. No. Oh, no. Oh, fuck. That means... Oh my god, no. That's so... I'm gonna have to redo the whole game. I'm gonna have to redo it in the whole game because that's a good deed I've failed. Are you kidding me? Oh my god, I'm done. Are you for real right now? I didn't realize leaving the area. Oh, I should have read that. Oh, I mean, it's my own fault, but like, oh my god, are you kidding? Are you kidding? She just dies as soon as you leave? Oh no. Oh, that's so annoying. And all I had to do was go scan that thing and I would have been fine. Oh, I'm so dumb. Oh no, I'm gonna have to replay the game, all because of that stupid decision. Are you freaking kidding me? Oh my god, because there's no way for me to go back, is there? Like when I hit play... Ah, shit, man, I'm gonna have to redo the game, bro. I thought maybe I could salvage it with a cloud save, but I hadn't actually been doing it, so of course I couldn't. And so essentially, because of this one stupid decision, I had wasted 13 hours on my first playthrough. And no matter what I did from now, I was going to have to start a new game anyway to redo all of the missable good deeds. So I could have just continued with this playthrough and got everything else done and then just done a quick playthrough at the end to clean up those missable good deeds. But I still would have had to do every other good deed, as the trophy only pops if you've done all the good deeds in the one playthrough, not over separate ones. So in the end, I just came up with the executive decision that I was going to start a new game, and this time around, instead of following the missables guide, I was just going to follow the entire walkthrough, so that way I didn't miss anything as I was making my way through the game. Now obviously that kind of ruins the whole point of the game, as you're meant to figure these things out for yourself as you go, and that's the whole reason there's no map or marker to point you where to go. But at this point, because I'd already wasted 13 hours, I obviously want to get these videos out as quick as I can, so I wanted to get the game done as quick as I could, and I was going to use a guide at the very end anyway to clean up the rest of the game, so why not just use it as I'm playing through the game, because some of these things I was never going to figure out on my own, to be honest. So with that, it was time to speedrun through the game until I got back to where I was, and thankfully you are able to skip cutscenes, and obviously because I had been in these environments before, I was actually pretty used to making my way around them now, so I was able to get through the game quicker too, as I knew where to go. But I also did take a bit longer to get back to where I was, because I was also having to pick up new collectibles that I had missed on my first playthrough. Surprisingly, on my first playthrough, I hadn't actually missed much in the early game, but when I did get to Akasa Marshes and the game opened up more, this is where I found my first collectible that I didn't get on my first playthrough. I also ended up opening my first Lymbic chest. Now obviously in my first playthrough I had opened up a Lymbic door, but this was the first time that I'd opened up a Lymbic chest. And then also places like Maristan, where I'd pretty much done no exploration in my first playthrough. Following the walkthrough, I did way more stuff this time around, including shutting down the time loop in Maristan Woods. I also shut down the time loop in Patham Abbey too this time around. I then also took on the long process of taking down the time loop in the main
main area of Akasa Marshes too, and I reckon this took a good half an hour because the Akasa Marshes is massive, and I was using the Guardian detector to try and point me in the right direction where I could find the rest of the time loop Guardians. And so like I said, about 30 minutes later, I finally killed the last time loop Guardian, and so I was then finally able to shut down the Akasa Marshes time loop. In Akasa Marshes, I also completed this really long mystery where you can find these glowy torches that you can twist in various ruins throughout the marshes, and using a note you pick up off the ground, you have to figure out a puzzle to only turn specific ones, and once you've done that, it opens up a door in the underground part under the village of Jova, completing a mystery. And like for example, this long mystery I would never have figured out on my own. In the end, I made it back to where we were up to, and as you can see, it took me 11 hours this time around to get back there. And this time I made sure when I headed to the Ministry of Cultural Primacy, I was not going to leave early. So first things first, I went and gathered the key card, so then I could open the upstairs door with it and gather the woman's clothing and also the satellite radio in the next door hallway. And this time around, I made my way straight to the ON soldier and traded her the woman's clothing. And so this time around, she could get changed out of her ON gear into the clothing and sneak past the other citizens. And this accomplished the good deed. Finally. I now literally only had one final missable good deed to do, so I was almost in the clear. For now though, I could continue on with the main quest, which was to save the secretary, and it turns out all I had to do was drop down the hole in front of this ranged enemy, which led to a new area. Downstairs, I had to fight my way through some more enemies, and then on the floor we can find Martin Ralst's wallet, which has a note in it saying coronation year of the one true king, along with a drawing of a computer. In the next room, because I had been using the guide, I ended up finding a drone module, which ended up getting me a trophy.
Rear guard. Oh, tech savvy. Acquire all drone modules. Oh, damn. Okay, oh yeah, you should now in tech savvy pick out one of each unique drone module. Sick. Acquire all drone modules. Let's go. I didn't realize that was all of them.
There were still more drone modules to find, but they were just better versions of the unique ones that we'd already found. Anyway, continuing on, I eventually found stairs leading back upstairs, and here we could finally kill the ranged enemy that was guarding this hallway. This allows the secretary to escape, and we can then find her back in Martin's office. She tells us that Martin was obsessed with Lord Astor, a key historical figure, and she says in order to access Martin's computer, we might need to brush up on our knowledge of Lord Astor. As we then go on to ask about the symbol of the charioteer, and she says she has no clue what it is, but we might be able to find out more information in Martin's safe. And she says each time Martin opened his safe, he said if only history moved backwards. So obviously we found that note before, which said pretty much the passcode to unlock the computer was the coronation year of Lord Astor. And thankfully there are paintings up everywhere in this building talking about Lord Astor, and here we can find his coronation year was 773 AD. This unlocks his computer and we get access to a few files. One of them is about the safe, which talks about using the major events of Lord Astor's life to unlock the safe. And the order of the numbers relating to these events will be based on the dates that they occurred in. The final file talks about a new portrait that he puts up to do with the bridal war, and so he updates his safe code to match this new portrait. I also forgot to mention earlier, but on a different computer in the building, you can find a file that talks about the new radio that Martin had installed, and if you change the signal to 60 AM, this causes the portrait next to the radio to slide back, revealing the safe that we need to unlock. For this, we need a 6-digit code, and on each portrait we can find a number. For example, this one says 79 years of life. Another one says 20-year reign. The new bridal portrait mentions 3 long years. And finally, the last one says 2 children. And then going off what the secretary Maeve said, we know that history needs to move backwards, so using the dates of each portrait, we know that the later years need to come first, and so the code ends up being 23 to 79. From the safe, we then get the Rising Iron Seal, along with a journal entry that talks about the legendary Aurigar Museum. And this seal fits perfectly into the locking mechanism at its doors, however a second seal is needed to fully open it. And the second seal is most likely found in Jelgen. And so this unlocks the Aurigar Museum as a new location for us to explore. I almost forgot to mention, but here downstairs I found some blank ID cards, along with a safe, which I could use the code 2703 to unlock, and inside I found an official Hadean stamp. With these items plus the satellite radio, I could now finish off the final 2 missable good deeds of the game. First, I headed back to the Akasa Marshes, where underneath this weird looking pillar, you can find an underground hideout with 2 ON soldiers hiding out inside. The first one mentions almost being out of metformin, which he needs to survive, and so if we trade him the pill bottle we found earlier, that completes this half of the good deed. And the other one talks about needing a SATCOM radio to contact HQ, so we can trade him the satellite radio we found earlier, but unfortunately no one from HQ actually answers, but this still completes the good deed. Following on from that, I headed back to the National Library, where downstairs near the book restoration department we can find a bunch of refugees hiding out, and there is an old lady who is trying to get everyone out of there, but she needs to be able to forge documents in order to do so. Thankfully, we are able to trade her the blank ID cards, along with the official Hadean stamp, and this means she can now start forging the documents to get them out of there. And this completes our final missable good deed, meaning I will not have to start another playthrough in order to get all of the good deeds. So glad we finally got there, but we still had plenty of game to go. For now, I actually had to head back to the Vissa Hills as I hadn't done the serpent part on this playthrough yet, but whilst I was here, I decided to head back to Gildas Brom, and because of all the good deeds and time loops I had done, I claimed my rewards, and I ended up getting a trophy.
Oh, Curator. Acquire 10 relics. Oh, okay, cool. Nice. So we got defensive gear, prism, another one. There's a relic, there you go. Relentless Assault. Glyph, defensive gear, tuning stone, weapon, another relic, there you go. Glyph, a relic, another one, defensive gear, glyph. So that must be, yeah, enough to get to 10.
Following that, I of course completed the whole serpent thing again, once again unlocking the Plains of Mist, and this time around I actually was able to shut down the time loop that was here as I had the right amine prism. Following on from that, I actually made my way to the Vault of Forbidden Knowledge that was here in the Vissa Hills behind this waterfall in this cave, and because I had researched enough items with Tanya, I knew the code to unlock the door. So I inputted the code into the door, and sure enough, it opened, earning me a trophy.
Hey, Vault Raider. Unseal a Vault of Forbidden Knowledge. Finally. So what actually are these things? Oh, so it's literally just like a vault full of stuff for us to collect. Sick.
So even though this was the only trophy related to Vaults of Forbidden Knowledge, we would still have to open all of them to find all of the relics. Anyway, with that now done, it was time to visit our next new location, the Plains of Mist. And here we find ourselves encountering our first grade 3 enemies, which I can't lie, really spiked the difficulty, and I died quite a few times getting used to these grade 3 enemies. But honestly, it was just a matter of trial and error until I defeated the enemies I needed to.
Crap. All the rage. Defeat all 3 Haze of Rage variants. Oh yeah, so, because we just took out the grade 3 one, I guess. Well, I feel like this is going to be really hard. Holy crap, I'm getting demolished. Holy crap. What? Why are they so difficult all of a sudden? I know it's grade 3, but god damn, son.
Eventually, I finally made it past that rage enemy, but the next thing I knew, I was faced with an ecstasy enemy.
Jesus Christ almighty. This is ridiculous. This is gonna be... I'm not even playing on the hardest difficulty, man. Oh, Buzzkiller. Defeat all 3 Haze of Ecstasy variants. There you go. So we're going to get all these trophies here because we're finally going against grade 3 enemies.
Before getting the next trophy though, I found myself needing to unlock the door to the Temple of the Fallen, which was amongst the ruins here in the Plains of Mist. The first thing I did was use the twin-headed serpent, which opened the first door, but then revealed a second one that we needed a code to open. As you can see on this code wheel, there are 4 slots to put the symbols in, each with a corresponding shape. So we've got a pentagon, a square, a circle, and a diamond. And we can find the corresponding symbol to each shape at each one of these bell towers. So the square one is this leaf looking thing, the pentagon is a dagger, the circle is the sun, and the diamond is an eye looking thing. And sure enough, inputting these 4 symbols to each corresponding shape opens up the second door, allowing us inside. Heading into the temple and making our way through, we end up finding this main area with a time loop in the middle. And in front of it, there was of course an enemy that had both a rage haze and also a grief haze.
Oh my good god, I died instantly. Why didn't it let me do the finishing move? It came up with like the thing as if I could do it. Hey, good grief. Defeat all 3 Haze of Grief variants. I'm pretty sure that was the final one. Soon.
That was indeed the final one of those trophies, because obviously earlier we defeated a grade 3 Terror haze when we had that boss fight getting the Keystone of Terror. Anyway, moving on from that, I took the left path from the main room, continuing through the temple, where I continued to fight my way through more enemies, and finding all of the collectibles along the way, and also killing time loop guardians along the way too, until eventually I reached a room which held the Trial of Lies and Truths. And this room had certain pressure plates we needed to stand on in order to open the next door to continue through, but if we stood on the wrong pressure plate, we would die. Each pressure plate had a correct and incorrect option, along with a symbol that related to a question nearby. There were some questions or statements that we could find, but if they didn't have a symbol matching to it, we didn't need to worry about it. So I'd already found the first symbol question, then I found the second symbol question, and I actually went on to answer this one first, which pretty much said which god is better, and this temple is literally all about TR, so obviously that was the right answer. I then went on to answer the other question, which was to do with Setharus, the god they didn't like, so obviously the answer was abandonment, not power. And then I found the third question, which was what fate befell Setharus, and once again they do not like the false god Setharus, so clearly the answer was dead, not alive. Having stood on the 3 correct pressure plates, the door then opened. In the next area, I found these inscriptions on these big stone tablets, which had a symbol and also spoke about the first, second, third, and fourth sacraments. Because then after that, I reached this big massive area with 16 pressure plates here, each with their own symbol. And so of course, I had to step on each pressure plate that related to each of the 4 sacraments. So I did the first one, then the second one, then the third one, and finally the fourth one. And having pressed all 4 of those, the next door did open. On the other side, I had to fight my way through a bunch of hollow walkers, and once I had done that, I found another study tome for Victor, and then all I had to do was switch this lever to go through the next door, and heading through I found the final room of the temple, along with a note from General Ulza, who has hidden the Keystone of Ecstasy here. And sure enough, at the foot of the shrine here, we can find the Keystone of Ecstasy. And just like the Keystone of Terror, upon us trying to pick it up, we are transported inside of it, where we are faced again with another boss fight, this time against Ecstasy hazes. At first, we've just got to take out a couple of tier 1 hazes, but eventually tier 2 hazes start spawning in, along with these weird turret things which we have to take out, and there are also these other ones that spawn in and create a protective shield around the hazes, so we've got to destroy that before we can kill the haze. And also with each haze you kill, you also start to get quicker and quicker quicker, until eventually you're absolutely zooming around the battlefield, which is kind of a good thing. Once all of the tier 1 and 2 hazes are defeated, and the health bar is almost fully gone, a bunch of these turrets spawn in around the battlefield and you have to take them all out, because then once you've done that, the final tier 3 haze spawns in. At this point though, because that yellow bar is full, you can move around so quickly and your attacks are so rapid, so in the end, this boss fight wasn't actually too bad. And so of course, upon us defeating it, we are transported back to the real world, and we are rewarded with the Keystone of Ecstasy. So now we were officially 3 keystones down, 1 more to go. On the way out of the temple, I did end up shutting down the time loop that was here before making my way back to the APC, and from there it was time to make our way to our next location, Jelgen. On the way there, we are once again contacted by Arabeth, who says that she has sent her men astray, so we shouldn't encounter any OMSIF operatives trying to stop us from now on. However, she does say she can't keep this up much longer as her men are starting to suspect something. Remy suggests that they should meet, however Arabeth says that it is too risky for now and she needs more time. The next time she contacts us will be when she's ready to make her move. After that, we then arrive in Jelgen, where we find some old ruins and a church. And can I just say, this location also is absolutely stunning. I'm honestly surprised at how good this game looks. Anyway, at the back of the church, we can find this gazebo area with a statue in the middle. And around the outside, we can find these number wheels that we obviously have to put in the correct order in order to open something up. Before figuring out any of that main stuff though, I followed the guide and did a good bit of exploring around the area, completing some side things first, including a vault of forbidden knowledge, some collectibles, and then when I was taking out a massive group of enemies, I kept dying over and over again, but this ended up being a good way for me to grind out tier 3 haze kills, as I ended up getting a trophy here. Oh, the harder they fall. Defeat 40 hazes of tier 3. Well, I feel like that is kind of bittersweet, because I've just been rinsing this same enemy over and over again, because I can't beat the rest of these guys. Oh, I guess I'll take the trophy though. Far out. Thankfully, on that very same attempt, I did finally defeat all of the enemies here, which actually ended up completing a good deed. Following on from that, I continued to explore, completing another good deed actually, and also getting my next hat. I also completed a few mysteries whilst I was here too, and I even killed all of the time loop guardians here, so I was able to shut down the time loop in this area as well. And so after following the guide and completing all of the side content here, it was time to figure out this numbered code. Now, around the area of Jelgen, you can find these crypt buildings which have a description on the front of them, along with some statues in front that you're able to turn clockwise and counterclockwise. The description on the door is a sort of riddle. For example, this one says, her brother Conrad plunged a dagger into Fenello's back as she and Vaughn looked away. From these context clues, you can see that one of these statues has a dagger, so you face it to stab one of them in the back, whilst the other statue looks away. And this unlocks the crypt door. Inside, you can find another inscription, and this one mentions the number 90. I then had to repeat the same thing with the other 3 crypts. This one, I had to make the female statue look away from the 2 male ones as they looked at her, and then the inscription inside mentioned the number 33. For the 3rd crypt, I had to make all of the statues have the same star symbol at the front, and the inscription inside mentioned 24. And then for the 4th and final crypt, I had to make the 2 statues on the left look into the middle, and the 2 statues on the right also look towards the middle. And this final inscription mentions the number 30. Now that I had all the numbers, I could input them into the cog wheels. However, this is when I noticed there was a symbol wheel before the number wheels. This confused me at first because there was never any mention of any symbols in the inscriptions, but this is when I realized that each crypt had their own symbol above it, so I just had to match the right symbol with the number that correlated to that crypt. Sure enough, when I had matched them all up correctly, the statue slid to the side, revealing a secret underground area. And down here, of course, after fighting our way through lots of enemies, I found another ancient coffin, which is starting to become a theme in this game, and inside I found the fading iron seal, which was the 2nd seal we would need to make our way into the Otogar Museum. So with everything pretty much done here, I made my way back to the APC, but instead of heading to the Otogar Museum straight away, way, I first headed back to the Akasa Marshes, where I was able to finish off a good deed with an item I got from Jelgen. After quickly doing that, it was then on to the Origami Museum. Upon arriving, we find ourselves in a cave right at the front door to the museum, and here I was able to place both the fading and rising iron seals in the correct slots, and this opened up the door into the museum. Inside, I found some hollow walker statues which I could turn, and facing them all towards this statue of a guy with a crown caused the door to rotate, allowing us into the next area. However, instead of finding ourselves in an old ancient ruin, instead we are in some sort of bunker tunnel, and the OMSIF logo can be seen on all of the vehicles. We can then enter a door which leads to a stairwell, which leads down to multiple different floors, and stopping at the first one, I found another tunnel with a door to an OMSIF training room, along with a vehicle that had a radio on its hood, and we could talk to the person on the other side. She tells us that she is stuck in the training room, but we'll get to saving her later. For now, we head down to the second level, where we can find some maintenance keys on a desk, and with this we are able to unlock maintenance doors, including this one which allows us to turn on the backup power generator. With the power now on, we can find in the room next door a switch which allows us to either open green doors or red doors in the facility. And I can't lie, this probably would have got so confusing, but thankfully because I was using the guide, I just followed that and it was the most efficient way to get everything done. So I opened the green doors first, pretty much just so I could kill this time loop guardian, because then I made my way downstairs to the third level, where I found another maintenance room, but this one had a blue and orange switch. I changed it to blue first, because this then allowed me into a lab room, where I could finally find our next NPC to talk to, and her name was Dr. Marga Hamill. We find out that she is the one that actually created the OMSIF drones, including the one we have. We also ask her about the symbol of the charioteer, which she says looks familiar, but we'll probably find out more information on it down on level B4. However, we need a special keycard to get into B4, so she says she'll give us hers if we help her get out of here by finding some parts for her to fix her drone. So she gives us the code to get into the drone workshop. Luckily, it was on the same level and not too far away as I'd already found it, and inputting the code she gave us, we could now get into the restricted area, where I found the drone processor that she needed. So I headed straight back to her and traded it to her, and in return she gave us the clearance beta keycard. I then went back and switched it to the orange doors, but this was purely just to do some of the side stuff here, because I then headed back upstairs to B2 and flicked the switch here to the red doors, and through one of the red doors I found this ladder that headed upstairs back to B1, and this led to a room where I could kill a time loop guardian, which was very important to do as there was a yellow door up here, and on the other side there is another NPC we need to talk to, and the thing is, if we had have opened that yellow door before killing that time loop guardian, the NPC would have died. I then made my way back out to the tunnel on B1, where I could open the maintenance door using the maintenance key, and here I found the yellow and purple switch. I actually changed it to purple first, because this then opens the door to the training room that we found locked earlier. However, as soon as we enter, the door behind us is shut, and in the control room here we can find the NPC that we talked to over the radio earlier, and she tells us the training exercise has accidentally been activated and we'll have to go through the whole thing before the doors reopen. So we are forced to go through 3 waves of enemies, each one getting progressively harder, and the annoying thing is, if you die, like I did, there are no checkpoints, so you have to restart from the very first wave. I eventually did get it done after a couple of attempts, which opened up the door to get into the room where the NPC was, and her name is CO Kagan. She tells us she is an assistant technician for OMSIF training, and they were doing exercises when the whole place went haywire and hollow walkers escaped everywhere, and that's why a majority of the people in this facility are now dead. We also ask her about the symbol of the charioteer, and she says the same thing, that we'll find it in B4, and as a thank you for saving her life, she gives us the clearance alpha keycard. After that, going through one of the cages, we can exit out a back door into a prison cell area, where I found some items that I would need for some good deeds. Using our new keycard, we are able to exit this area into the next room, which has a time loop. Unfortunately, I couldn't deal with it yet as I hadn't killed all of the time loop guardians, but I could head through the door here, which took me back out to the tunnel, where I then proceeded to change the switch to the yellow doors, because then heading back into the time loop room, a yellow door had now opened, which led back into that room where the guardian was, and we can now find the NPC out here safe and sound. But before talking to him, I actually wanted to find the last time loop guardian so I could shut down the time loop first. And so after some exploring, I realized that I hadn't opened a blue door on B3 yet, so I flipped the switch back to blue, and sure enough, inside I found my last lot of time loop guardians. I then headed back upstairs, where I was now able to enter the time loop and shut it down. After that, I then went and finally spoke to the next NPC, and his name was Dr. Balam Lamek, and he was part of the science team working on time loops. He then warns us that down on B4, they were able to create a brand new time loop, and he talks about a madman who is trying to weaponize them. We can then ask him how they were successful in creating the new time loop, and I can't lie, it's pretty graphic, but pretty much they pitted a Sabinian against some Palamists, who then killed them, and as a result, because of this great act of violence, this is what caused the time loop to form. This guy feels great regret for it, so he tells us how we can take down the new time loop by giving us the code to access the terminal, along with an amine prism to shut it down. We find out that the madman he was talking about is Dr. Mabden, who is trying to weaponize the time loop, and we have to stop him. So from there, it was time to make our way down to the bottom level, B4. Down here we find a locked door, but thankfully we have our 2 clearance keycards, which we are able to use to enter inside. In this room we find the newly created time loop, along with an intercom so we can talk to the NPC we can see up in the window nearby. And this NPC is indeed Dr. Mabden, and also our final NPC of the game.
I will sincerely thank your commanding officer for
Lend an ear. Converse with all NPCs. Nice. Nice, the guide said I would get that. Upon speaking with Dr. Mabden, because we are dressed like an OMSIF soldier, he thinks that we are an OMSIF soldier, and that we're here to help him with his experiment. And as you can see in the background there, in that test tube, is the Keystone of Rage. Anyway, he goes on to tell us that he is the head of weapons research, focusing on time loop weaponization. We ask him why, and he just says, why wouldn't we? Think of what we could accomplish. He then tells us that we are here to test out the new hardware surrounding the time loop, and he tells us to focus on surviving the protocols. So he then goes on to engage the first protocol, and pretty much what this does allows him to spawn in Hollow Walkers at the click of a button. This first wave of Hollow Walkers are pretty easy to take down. After we've defeated them though, we then have to start the second protocol, and I'm sure you can see where this is going, as once again we have to defeat waves of enemies in order to continue. And this second wave I actually ended up dying on, but the most annoying thing about every time you die is you have to rescan the keycards just to get back in the room. Thankfully though, unlike the training room from earlier, we actually do get a checkpoint as you get put back on the same wave you were just on. Of course, I ended up dying a couple more times on this second wave, but not long after that I was able to complete it. Then came the third wave. Interestingly though, I found this one actually easier, and I completed it on my first attempt. This time around though, there wasn't only 3 waves as we went on to the 4th one, but this one was once again difficult as I went back to dying again, but it wasn't too bad as I did manage to get it done on my second attempt. This then leads into the 5th wave, which is the last one, and it was also by far the hardest as I had to deal with 3 rage hazes all at the same time, along with the Hollow Walker they were coming out of. Surprisingly though, I actually kept my cool, and I think because of the practice in the previous 4 waves, I took things a little more patiently, and I was actually able to complete this final wave on my very first attempt. With that, Dr. Mabden says we are done, and says we are dismissed. Of course though, we weren't done here yet, as I walked over to the container pod and I was able to pick up the Keystone of Rage, our final keystone. And yeah, this time around I guess the wave of enemies kind of counted as the boss fight for this keystone, but before leaving I still had to shut down this new time loop. So I input the code that Dr. Balam gave us before into the computer here, and I generated the first Guardian row. And so this ends up kind of being the 6th wave of enemies, which of course I did die to, to, but upon defeating them all, that was the first time loop Guardian taken down. Then I just went back to the computer and generated the second one, Guardian Sigma, and once again this was another tough wave of enemies, which unsurprisingly I did die to once again, but when I finally did defeat them, that was the second and last time loop Guardian, and I could now shut down the new time loop, which Dr. Mabdem is not very happy with. After shutting down the time loop, this then reveals a ladder underneath it, which then leads to another ladder back up and into a storage room where we can get some more collectibles, and we can find a clearance Delta keycard on a body. This then allows us to head upstairs where we are able to swipe this keycard and get into the room where Dr. Mabden was. But I say was because he is now gone. At the end of this room we can find an elevator that then takes us back up to B0. Back on this level we can now find the 3 scientists we saved, all waiting beside a car here, and we can find out a little bit more information from them now that they've escaped. And from this information we can kind of get hints of what is truly happening in Hadia. In fact, Dr. Ballum straight up says that the Zeal Council orchestrated the whole civil war here in Hadia. So if you haven't figured it out already, OMSIF is like the secret army of the Zeal Council, and the Zeal Council is pretty much this worldwide secret evil organization. We'll find out more about this in a sec, as after I spoke to all of them I made my way back to the APC, where I was able to research the research items I had got in this location, and I ended up getting the first of 7 trophies related to researching items. Box of bullets.
Nice.
Conspiracy theorist.
I'll have a look in the database.
Perform research on all items related to the conspiracy. Lymbic, okay.
My article in the Zeal Council conspiracy is up.
Oh, so she writes an article once she's... Tanya has finished her article about the conspiracy she has uploaded to the department, so now we can read everything. I can't lie, this was a really cool addition to the game, because this game has a lot of world building and lore, and to be honest, it all kind of got confusing after a while. So it was really cool that once you had researched everything, Tanya would write this big massive article, which pretty much explained all the lore to you in a nice little article, making everything a lot easier to understand. And so for example, in this one, we find out all about the Zeal Council. I'll quickly fast forward through the article and you can slow it down if you want to read all of it, but essentially the Zeal Council found out about the calamity in Hadia and the creatures that come out of the time loops, and instead of wanting to stop it like the Order of the Eye and the Vigil, they wanted to experiment on it and harness its power for their own evil and power hungry wants. But in order to get access to this stuff, they needed another calamity to happen, and that's why they literally purposely started a civil war between the Sabinians and Palamists, just so these great acts of violence could occur and the calamity would happen. Anyway, this article goes into more detail so you can read it if you want, but for now let's move on, because straight after that I researched another item and got another trophy. I think there might be another trophy. Demonologist.
I'll look it up.
Perform research on all items related to limbic invasions.
I wrote a piece on
And she's
several of the past calamities.
Nice, another piece. Okay, these are interesting to read. Like the lore in this game is actually really good. It's just kind of confusing, but the fact that she like brings it all together makes it a lot easier. Now, I'll do the same thing with this article. You can slow it down if you want to read all of it, but this one is pretty cool as it goes through all of the previous calamities that have happened in Hadia's history, along with how they occurred and what led to them. And this just gives you context into how Hadia has pretty much been at war for a long time with each other. It's also cool because it gives you context to all the different places you've been getting the keystones from, as they all related to a separate calamity that occurred in the past. Anyway, I'll leave it at that and let's move on. Now, even though we had all of the keystones now, before heading back to Lake Sinan, I had a few more things to clean up. First, I headed back to Matistan, but of course, on the way there, I was once again contacted by Arabeth, and she lets us know she is ready to make her move. Remy is about to say we should rendezvous at Lake Sinan, however, a corporal walks in on Arabeth and says she is relieved of her command, and she is to report back for debriefing, and then this is when some gunshots go off, and the radio goes silent, and she doesn't answer back when Remy tries to contact her again. Tanya tries to reassure him, saying that she is sure Arabeth is alright, but Remy isn't as confident and he just says we've got work to do and continues on with the mission. So following on from that, I arrived in Maristan, where I came to this house and traded this girl one of the mementos we found on one of the dead bodies in the Oregon Museum prison cells. However, this does not complete the good deed, as I still had one more memento to go. So next, I actually made my way back to where it all started, uncharted Sinedra Forest, because back at Ernest Cadell's house we can now find Atticus, who we gave the keys to the vehicle in Vissa Hills, and he brought this woman and child back to his house that were at the campsite in the Vissa Hills. And speaking to the little boy, we are able to trade him the second memento, and in doing so this completes the good deed, and it also ends up being the 23rd and final good deed in the game, getting a trophy. Man of the people. Accomplish all good deeds. Oh, finally. I didn't stuff up any missables this time because I was following the guide very closely. So if we go to exploration, as you can see, every single good deed here is done. Didn't miss any missables this time. Perfect. So now with all of the good deeds done, it was time to head to Lake Sinan. Now heading here started a cutscene, but I also did immediately get a trophy as well. Oh, it popped straight away. Ever after, ensure that all possible NPCs end up at Lake Sinan. Oh, we got another cutscene here, okay. I will say quickly, just note the woman that walked in. This will come into play later on, but for now, I finally knew who this guy was working for, obviously the Zeal Council. And he goes on to confirm this, as he says, your mother worked for us, obviously because she was part of the OMSIF division. And like we read in that computer file back in the Akasa Marshes, they purposely employed our mother because she knew a lot about Hadia. Specifically things that weren't common knowledge, like the Vigil. In exchange, they trained her and gave her some men, and sure enough, one by one, the Vigil members began disappearing as she was hunting them down. However, she showed signs of slowing down when it came time to killing Vitalis. So the Zeal Council presented Arabeth with falsified phone records that implicated Vitalis as the one who called the police the night she attempted to smuggle us out. And so this reveals that the whole time she was mad at our father, it was all because the Zeal Council made something up. After Old Uglyface has revealed that, we then continue on with the story. So obviously we were now back in Lake Sinan, and I quickly ran around here looking for the NPCs who had now made it here, and surprisingly there were only 4, including this girl, Haley Talar, who was the teacher we completed a missable good deed for back in the village of Jova. The second one was Abbot Jaffa, who ends up here no matter what. The third one is Rebecca, who just like Abbot Jaffa ends up here no matter what as well as part of the story. But the fourth one was actually Maxie, the dog next to her, which is the dog we freed from the village of Jova and also completed a good deed for. So surprisingly for this trophy you only had to complete 2 missable good deeds. I should also note that next to Abbot Jaffa you can now find a full bottle of mead, which we will need for a mystery later. Whilst I was here I also completed the Vault of Forbidden Knowledge in Lake Sinan. After that I then started making my way down towards the Lymbic Forge, but here I could finally open a Lymbic chest that was at the bottom of this drained pool, and out of this chest I would get a Lymbic glyph, which as a result got me a trophy. Emotional Warfare. Acquire all glyphs of each Limbic sphere. There you go. Wave of Wrath. Well, there you go, all the bloody trophies are coming in hot now. After that, before heading down to the Lymbic Forge, I went on to complete a few more mysteries and side things, including hunting down the last Time Loop Guardian, so I could head down and get rid of the Time Loop that was here in Lake Sinan. After completing all of that, I then made my way down into the Lymbic Forge and placed the 3 keystones in each of their respective slots, which finally resulted in another story trophy. Hey, Emotional Baggage. Complete Act 2. Ooh, I'm interested to see what's to come now. Very, very interested. Act 3 is very short. Oh, okay. After placing in all of the keystones, this unlocks all 4 locks and the door finally opens. On the other side we find this big circular room where hollow walkers start dropping from the walls, and after defeating a whole boatload of them, we are able to flick a lever which opens a door leading into a tunnel. As we start making our way through the tunnel, Tanya contacts us and says to her calculations we're heading towards Mount Obek, the big mountain we can see above Lake Sinan. However, as we continue further into the tunnel we start to lose signal with Tanya. We continue continue making our way further into the tunnel, which I can't lie is a massive walk. Like, it's kind of surprisingly long, but you will see it is for a reason, I guess. Eventually, towards the end, Tanya contacts us one more time, letting us know this is probably the last time we will talk, as the signal is going to drop out because of how far away we are. And so she wishes us luck and tells us to stop the calamity. And so with that, we pretty much make it to the end of the tunnel, where, like I said, it was long for a reason, because here we get a trophy. Long and not so winding road. Traverse the tunnel from the Lymbic Forge to the Eye of God. Ah, so that trophy is like a story trophy pretty much. I did see that trophy and I was wondering what it meant. But we're obviously at the Eye of God now. Ooh. At the end of this tunnel, we are met with this giant white wall, and heading alongside it, we eventually come to this room which has 4 pedestals, and on each pedestal we can get a different orb. The first one being cobalt, the second one being gold, the third one being emerald, and the fourth and final one being crimson. In the middle of the room we can find another pedestal which has an amine prism row, along with the fail-safe scroll. It says at the bottom of the scroll that once the orbs are returned to their keepers, the fail-safe shall be revealed, and the means of initiation then rests solely on the shoulders of a Fall Guard. After picking up this scroll, the wall in front of us then slides away, revealing a path inside. However, as we head inside, we find a bunch of containers with the Zeal Council symbol on them, and so this means the Zeal Council has already made it to the Eye of the God. Once we make our way on top of the containers, we do get a better view of what's going on, along with our next trophy. Holy crap. Well traveled. Visit all locations. Well, I guess this is the final location. Holy crap, that's a giant enemy. Oh my goodness, this is crazy. What even is this place? What the hell? So this giant thing in front of us is the Eye of God, which is the giant entity that causes all of the calamities and brings about these limbic invasions. And so this is how we stop the calamity, by taking out the Eye of God. As soon as I started looking around the area, I noticed that all of the people here from the Zeal Council were dead, as it appears that there was a breakout of Hollow Walkers that killed all of them. In this giant room, we can also find 4 different sections where we can fight against 4 gigantic Hollow Walkers. And I guess these things pretty much acted as the final bosses of the game, as I can't lie, I really struggled against these enemies at first. Obviously, this is the first time you fight against these giant Hollow Walkers, so finally some enemy variation, but also because of that, I did not know their attack patterns, which were different, so it took a good bit of getting used to. Essentially, they all have 3 phases. Once you've taken out about a third of their health, they will spawn in a tier 1 haze, this first one being Ecstasy. Then once you've dealt with that first haze and dealt about another third of damage to the Hollow Walker, they will spawn in a tier 2 haze. And then finally, once you've defeated the tier 2 haze and almost gotten the Hollow Walker down to their last bit of health, they will spawn in a tier 3 haze. And this is where I died a lot, because not only do the hazes start to get more difficult throughout the fight, but the Hollow Walker also starts to get more difficult as it becomes more aggressive and does different attacks. And so at this point, the game was kind of annoying me, as the combat started to show its cracks. Oh my good god, bro. The ground attack is clapped. I did eventually take down this first giant hollow, which was the first of 4 down. In each area where there is a giant hollow, you can also find these 2 giant statues with different symbols, and you have to select the correct one, which has a symbol matching one of the limbic spheres. So for example, this one had the Rage symbol, and obviously Rage is red, so I had to put the crimson orb in this one. So after that, I moved on to the next giant hollow, and this one had the Terror hazes. What? I just don't get that. Am I like running out of block or something? I don't understand. Like what? How am I meant to dodge? The floor just... I don't understand that. The whole floor just starts damaging me. Where am I meant to go? Is there like a safe spot on the floor? It's hard to tell. Mother...
Why do they have to disappear? Oh, this freaking sucks, bro. I'm not liking this game anymore. The end game fights are just not fun. Like, yeah, I know it's meant to be more difficult as the game goes on, but like, it's just, the combat is just so janky. Like, it's just, I don't like it. I don't know, I can't tell whether it's because I'm bad or it's honestly just not good combat. It's probably a mix of both, I guess. There we go. Oh my god, finally. After finally defeating that giant hollow, I made a decision to switch to a rage weapon and use some rage glyphs to help me, as the rage limbic spheres focuses the most on just pure damage, and I thought that was probably the playstyle that suited me the most. As for most of the game, I found myself just doing all-out attack in most fights, and you'll see in a sec, but this ended up being a really good decision. Anyway, after that fight, the statue here had the grief symbol, so I went and placed the cobalt orb in this one. So after that, I moved on to the next giant hollow, and this one had the rage hazes. And surprisingly, now with the new loadout that I was running, I actually ended up defeating this boss on my very first attempt. Just going to show that maybe I should have been using rage weapons the whole time. The statue in this area had the terror symbol, and so I placed the emerald orb here, and then all I had to do was go and take on the giant hollow in the final area. And of course, this one had the final type of limbic enemy, the grief hazes. Now, the rage weapon wasn't perfect, as I did die in this fight, but to be honest, I always struggled with grief hazes the most, so it did end up taking me a few attempts. Yes, come on, this is it. Yes. Then all I had to do was place the orb in this final statue, which was the ecstasy symbol, so of course the gold orb, and as a result, this activates the failsafe. So I headed to the area in front of the Eye of God, where the blue beams are pointing, but first I had to take down this time loop, which thankfully all those giant hollow walkers were the guardians, so I could shut it down straight away. And in this time loop, we can see that the great act of violence was some of the employees killing each other on purpose to create the time loop, I believe. Maybe telling me that they were trying to shut down this operation as they realized what the Zeal Council was doing was wrong. Or maybe the Eye of God affected them in some way and controlled them to do this. I don't know. But anyway, with the time loop now shut down, I found that all the blue beams were pointing to this pedestal in the middle. However, before I interacted with that, the guide told me to head over to this desk where I could find my next cap. And so now with my pure golden hat equipped, it was time to interact with the pedestal. And of course, like the scroll said, we needed a full guard item. Thankfully, we have our heirloom necklace from our father, which we are able to put down onto the pedestal. And this actually completes the story. Redemption. Complete Act 3. So that's the end of the game. Damn. What's gonna happen? I'm intrigued. Crap. What is going on? Not our drone. so confused.
Don't fucking move!
What did we do? Well, what we did was sink the Eye of God into a lava pit, and that was the failsafe to pretty much destroy it. And then of course, after we escape, we are captured by the Zeal Council, and that brings us back to the interrogation now. And now we know why they are mad at us, because we destroyed the Eye of God, which is what they were trying to use for their own benefits. And we obviously did this to protect the people of Hadia, who they were taking advantage of. The interrogator then pulls out a pistol, and this is what happens next.
See where that gets you. Leave us. Usually, this is my favorite part. But I don't know. You're different. Almost forgot. Did he lie about anything?
Yes,
Oh, really? What
That's
did he
our
lie
mom.
about?
I'm still alive.
I could tell by the voice.
Look at you. Compromised by your emotions. Can you walk?
I'm not sure. How did you...
I'll tell you on the way. Come on. Tanya's waiting.
Where are we going?
Home. We're going home.
Wait, so we still got the necklace? Are you kidding me? That's the end of the game? What? What sort of dumbass ending is that? I don't understand, bro. What did we actually do? We stopped the calamity, did we? Yeah, well, obviously we did, yeah, because that guy said the scientific breakthroughs, they couldn't happen. So we obviously stopped the calamity by destroying whatever that big orb was, the Eye of the God or whatever. And then we're just gonna go back to Hadia. We've stopped like the war or something. Like what? Oh my god, this game low-key kind of reminds me of Mind's Eye. I mean, to be fair, this was a lot better than Mind's Eye, a lot more interesting and at least somewhat different to just a third-person shooter. But I don't know. At first, it had me. This game, it had me interested, and then as the game went on, it kind of just, I don't know, petered out a bit. I wasn't sure if that's because I was using a guide, maybe, but gosh, I don't know. I do not know. Honestly, it was a good game. It was, for the most part. I commend the effort, and like this would probably be the perfect game for someone who likes just exploring and figuring things out for themselves. But you probably can't hear me right now because this is freaking loud as hell. Oh, okay, we got an end credit scene. Hold up. Our drone made it out.
Identification confirmed. Eye of God located.
I have got what? So it's still alive? What? Thank you for playing. Your journey through Hadia leaves echoes across time. Reload your save game to continue unraveling mysteries, completing good deeds, closing time loops, and unlocking the vaults of forbidden knowledge. The story might not yet be finished. Interesting. Well, we did the story, I guess. Now, honestly, for the most part, I did think this game was good. I think I was just a little annoyed after those boss fights at the end of the game where I kept dying, but looking back on it now, the end of the story did have a pretty cool twist, and I did enjoy playing through this game. And it's cool how the story isn't really explicitly told to you through cutscenes. You actually have to listen and learn from the game environment around you to figure out the story fully. Anyway, now with the story done, it was time for the cleanup, which is actually pretty quick for this game. Well, mainly because I was using the guide and I hadn't really missed anything. So the first thing I did was head back to the APC where I was able to research some more items and get another trophy. All of Ash. Ooh, Gentleman Scholar. Perform research on all items related to the Order of the Eye. Sick.
Once again, after this, Tanya writes another article, and this one is about the Order of the Eye. And this one is actually pretty cool, as you get to learn about the history of the Order of the Eye, including the Foal Guard and then eventually the Vigil, and you learn the context of why they do what they do. Once again, you can stop this if you want to read the whole thing and find out more, as these articles do go into a lot of detail. Directly after that, I researched another item and got another trophy. Or do we get a trophy? Yes, sworn to secrecy. Perform research on all items related to the Vigil. Once again, Tanya writes another article, this time on the Vigil, and unlike the previous article, this one goes more in depth about the Vigil, as this one talks about the history of the Foal Guard and then how that evolved into the Vigil. So sorry, I got it wrong. The previous article was more about the Eye of the God, and then this one talks about the Foal Guard and Vigil being the guardians that were a division of the Order of the Eye. Anyway, you can pause it and read it if you want, and I'm sure you'll understand it better than whatever I'm saying. But anyway, moving on, I first headed back to Sinedra Forest, where I went and completed the Vault of Forbidden Knowledge that was here. After that, I went and finally opened the Limbic door that we found right at the very start of the game here. And this opens up an underground ruin where we can find the time loop for Sinedra Forest. And thankfully, the final time loop guardian was also in this room, so I was able to shut down this time loop straight away. I'd also found a research item down there, so I was able to head back and research that, which got me another trophy. Historian. Perform research on all items related to Hadia. Once again, Tanya writes another big article, but this one is actually about ancient Hadia. So it quite literally talks about the first Hadians and then how they came to start believing in the religion of Setharism. It then also goes on to talk about how Sabinians and Palamus were the two factions that were sort of formed and the first war against each other. Anyway, once again, I'll let you read it, because moving on, I headed back to the Akasa Marshes. Once here, I made my way over to this soldier in this park area, and by trading him the full bottle of mead that we found from Lake Sinon earlier, he gives us the keys to Captain Vass's office. So now with the keys, I could finally make my way in to Captain Vass's office, finishing that mystery, and inside the office we end up finding our final cap, along with another research item, but by equipping this final hat we do get the trophy. Passion for fashion. Acquire and wear all baseball caps. So you don't just have to get them all, you actually have to put them on and wear them, which thankfully I've been doing, and so I just had to do that with that last one, and we're good to go. Got ourselves that trophy. Following on from that, I went on to complete the Vault of Forbidden Knowledge that was here in Akasa Marshes, and then I also had another mystery that I had left to do here, before I made my way back to the APC, where I was able to trade in that final research item, getting not only the final trophy for this part of the research, but also for finding all research items in total as well. Prison Manifest. War Correspondent. Perform research on all items related to the Civil War, and well read. Perform research on all items. Nice. Well, that was good to follow the guide to get that done. This one will be interesting to read through
You can now read my
her article on it. Yeah, this will be interesting. I like reading these articles. I feel like it just brings all the lore together and makes it easier to understand. So once again, Tanya wrote another article, this one about the Hadian Civil War and the Sixth Calamity, and this one was a really good read, as it obviously directly relates to the events of the game. And this one pretty much discusses all of the events leading up to the Civil War and how it happened, and then from the Civil War, how the Sixth Calamity also began as well. So once again, you can stop it if you want to read and find out more. With this last research item, we also unlocked the code for the last Vault of Forbidden Knowledge, which was the Akasa Marshes one, but I can't lie, I just used the guide to solve it earlier. Anyway, after that, I made my way to the Vissa Hills, where I went on to complete the final mystery of the game. Found on a corpse in the Plains of Mist. Super Sleuth. Resolve all mysteries. Let's go. Once again, thanks to the guide. Pilgrimage mystery solved. Okay. So if we go, well, obviously, yeah, this is the research actually. All good deeds done and all mysteries done. Would you look at that? Boom. Next up from that, I made my way to Taoju, where I was now finally able to shut down the time loop at the back of the town here, as I had the right amine prism now. And shutting down this time loop was actually the last time loop of the game. But of course, to get the trophy, we still had to clear all the remaining enemies in each area as well, not just the time loops. Because obviously with the time loops gone, the enemies wouldn't respawn now. Before doing that though, I actually made my way to Maristan next, and here I opened up the final vault of forbidden knowledge, where I was able to pick up the final relic in the open world. And because I had now done everything the game had to offer, I made my way back to the Watcher's Nest in the Vissa Hills and spoke to Gildas Brom to get my final rewards from doing all the good deeds and time loops. And as a result, this got me the final relics that I needed for the trophy. What about the time loops?
What's our status on time loops?
The calamity won't last very long thanks to you.
Hey, Antiquarian. Antiquarian. Acquire all relics. All 29 of them, as the icon suggests. So what do we get? Glyphs, here we go. The Omen of Oblivion. Desert the Final Rapture, Fury Enhanced on it. Here's another one. Colleague's Providence. Night Fate Elite, Chromatic Guard Elite. Another relic at Gluttony Elite. Limbic Mending Elite. Wisdom of the Griffin. Void Elite. Berserk Elite. Another relic, Knell of Receding Rage. Animosity Elite, Feed on Fear Elite, Blessed Hand of Setherus. God, those would have been handy to have before I did friggin' that final fight. Gosh. Now, before I had to kill the rest of the enemies in the game, I did have 3 more trophies to get, which were going to be really easy. I just had to head back to the Akasa Marshes and visit Victor, and get him to upgrade some of my gear. First, I just had to upgrade one of each weapon type to grade 5. Twin axes, I'm assuming? Yeah, so twin axes, upgrade this one.
I'm getting
to grade 5, nice. And then we want to upgrade a sword to grade 5. Nice. Then we want to upgrade a great sword to grade 5.
The towers will be trapped.
And then we want to upgrade a polearm to grade 5. If I upgrade this one, I've got it equipped, so that should... Good vibrations. Upgrade one of each weapon type to grade 5, and for having 2 grade 5s equipped? No? No, because first I had to upgrade some defensive gear to grade 4. So then if we go defensive gear, and we want... Oh, accessorizing. Imbue a defensive gear to grade 4. Done. And then I had to upgrade a second piece of defensive gear to grade 4 as well. So then I could equip 2 grade 5 weapons along with 2 grade 4 defensive gear to get a trophy. And a grade 4. To the teeth. Equip 2 grade 5 weapons and 2 grade 4 defensive gear at once. Gosh, I wish I had known I could get him to study so I could get grade 5 and grade 4 stuff, so I would have been able to use it for that final area. I didn't even realize... When did I pick that up? I don't even know. Why did I not remember to do that? That would have been so helpful if I had better gear and whatnot. Would have been easier, but oh well. Got the 3 trophies there, I guess. And so now I only had one final trophy to go, and this was probably the most difficult one, as there is no way to track the remaining enemies in the game like you could track the time loop guardians. You've kind of just got to run around and hope you bump into the enemies you haven't killed yet. There is one way you can track which areas you've done so far, and this is by going to the navigation computer, and when you hover over a location, it tells you what threats are still there. However, when you clear out a place fully, it'll say clear next to threats instead of what grade enemies are left there. So knowing this information, I decided to just head to each location in the order I went there during the story. So first up, I went to Sinedra Forest. Even though unfortunately there is no way to track which enemies you've already killed, I thought the most efficient way to get this done without just running aimlessly around hoping to run into enemies was to try and find a guide that went through all enemies in each location. And sure enough, I found this goated video guide by this channel named Splitherheim. Shout out this guy because because this guide was awesome and saved me so much time. I was able to watch his video in real time, following his exact steps as he did it, leading to each enemy in every location, and if I'd already defeated that enemy, I just moved on to the next one. So if you're also going to go for this platinum, I'd highly recommend you watch this guy's playlist. He has every single location with every single enemy, and if you follow along, you'll get it done in a couple of hours at most. It saves you from running around like a headless chook for like 8 hours trying to find an enemy that is in some hiding spot you never thought to look. So for example, in Sinedra Forest, I had to go back and kill a lot of the enemies that we fought at the start of the game down in the underground ruins, as obviously they had respawned because I wasn't able to take down the time loop until later on. This was the same thing in the trench area too, and the path on the way to the Arcus Spire as well. And funnily enough, whilst watching this guide is when I finally learned that you can go down and up ladders a lot quicker just by clicking the sprint button, which I wish I had have known earlier, as that was one of my biggest pet peeves with the game, with how slow you climbed ladders and went down them, but this made it so much faster. I swear the game never explicitly tells you this, but maybe I was also just being stupid, I don't know. I'll tell you what is stupid though, I somehow missed some normal enemies at the very top of the Arcus Spire, but with those enemies taken care of, Sinedra Forest was now clear. I then went back to the Akasa Marshes, where I found some enemies that had respawned in the underground area under the village of Jova that I had visited earlier in the game. I also found some hollow walkers that were hidden from view out in the marshes, and these are the sneaky buggers I'm talking about if you tried to do this on your own without a guide, as you literally can't see them hiding in the water. After that, there were a few more enemies scattered around the marshes that had respawned in, and this was the same with the tunnel where I saved Victor earlier in the game too. But once that was done, I had cleared all enemies in the Akasa Marshes. So I moved on to the Vissa Hills next. Here I had to kill some enemies that had respawned back in the open fields, along with some enemies in the mineshaft areas. But once that was done, the Vissa Hills were clear. I then moved on to Lake Sinan, where a couple of enemies had respawned back in some side rooms on the way to the Lymbic Forge. Once again though, the guide made it really easy to find all of them, and so soon enough, Lake Sinan was pretty clear. Next up, I headed off to Tauju, and because this was the final time loop that I had shut down, a lot of the enemies had respawned back in, but thankfully I found this area pretty easy to navigate, so following the guide was quite simple. And so after quite a bit of killing enemies here, Tauju was also now clear. After that, I made my way to Matistan, where I had literally just 2 enemies left near the Blood Queen statue, and so with them gone, Maristan was now clear. This is also when I noticed a glitch with the Plains of Mist, as it always showed its threat level as whatever the location had before you hovered over it. For example, Maristan was clear, so I went over the Plains of Mist and it said it was clear, but then I hovered over Jelgen, which had a threat level of 3, and Plains of Mist also now had a threat level of 3. And for some reason, this was the only location that did this, so I decided to leave it for last in case I had cleared it out already. At this point, the 2 Leith locations were both clear, and the Origar Museum was also clear, so that just left Jelgen and Plains of Mist, so I headed to Jelgen first. And I can't lie, I did have a sneaky feeling that this would be the last location, as I felt like I had already cleared out the Plains of Mist. So I began following the guide, and next thing I knew, this happened. Oh my god, wait, that was it. Legend of the Foal. It was just those final 2 enemies, are you kidding me? Oh my goodness. We did it. We did it. Yes, let's go. Legend of the Foal. Close all time loops and defeat all remaining entities. Ah, so Plains of Mist must have been done then. It was just this place. And it was literally just those 2 enemies that were up here that I obviously didn't walk into. Oh my god. And 100%, that means we got the trophy. Hero of Hadia. Obtain all trophies. Hell is us. Done. Thank goodness for that. Cleaning up all the rest of the enemies almost took me close to 2 hours. Honestly, I'm so glad I was able to find this guide to help me, because it would have been a pain trying to find all those enemies on my own. So I'm very glad to have used that guide and got it done quicker. There you go. Can't believe that's it. I'm done with this game. And so with that, I had officially platinumed Hell Is Us. In the end, this second playthrough took a total of 23 hours, but overall I spent 36 hours with this game as I wasted 13 of it on my first playthrough, where I obviously missed that one missable good deed. So I could have had this done quicker if I had followed the guide from the beginning, but you know what, I'm glad I gave this game a go without the guide just to see what it was like. And honestly, I would recommend you play this way if you want the full experience of this game and you enjoy exploring and figuring things out for yourself. But if you just do want the platinum as quick as you can, I would recommend to just use a full walkthrough so you don't miss anything and you get it done quicker. Overall, I thought this was a pretty good game with an interesting story and some great world building and lore. That was probably the best part of the game. The combat was a bit hit and miss for me, to be honest, but the exploration and puzzle solving was actually pretty cool. So I would honestly recommend people play and platinum this game, especially when the game does go on sale. I feel like then it's worth the money. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you've played the game, let me know down in the comments. I feel like this was a bit of a low-key game that came out last year and probably not a whole lot of people played it. So I would be very interested to see how many people have. Anyways, as always, I'd just like to say thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. I really do appreciate it and your support means the world to me. If you did make it this far in the video, comment down below, Remy's hair sucks, so I know you watched all the way through. And as always, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to all of my channel members. I feel very honored to have that extra level of support from you guys, so thank you as always. And of course, an extra special thanks to my ultra rare members, including Shajita456, CRX1207, Consistent R4Q, and our newest ultra rare member, John Newen 9136. Thank you all so much. And so with all that said, thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next video, which will finally be our next series that I'm starting up, which is of course, like I mentioned at the start of the video, the Batman Arkham series. So see you in Batman Arkham Origins. See you all soon.
I can hear the demons call when they do what they do.